All right, everybody. I just realized I didn't have my PNG tuber thing up. So I thought I just got back from seeing Spider-Man Brand New Day. There will be a podcast on the Patreon for it. Um, might release that on its own, but we'll see. And I thought it only made sense to rank all of the Spider-Man movies, the live-action movies, and the Spider-Verse films that have been released so far. Because Beyond the Spider-Verse is coming out, I think, next year. It was supposed to come out in 2024, but then it got delayed a bunch. But yeah. Um, at least I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah. So yeah, and I'm going to be doing these in release order rather than in trilogy or duology order and everything. And I'm not doing the solo villain movies, so I'm just going to add another row. Invalid. Let me, here we go. Actually, so you can read that. All right. So yeah, so I'm just gonna move all the Venom movies, I think. I don't know. And then these movies. Yeah, because I have not seen these movies. I have the Venom movies because I got the 3-pack of them, but like I don't have Morbius, I don't have Madam Web, and I don't have Craven. And from what I understand, I am not missing anything by not watching them. So yeah. But here we go with all of the live action movies and the Spider-Verse films. So let's get to it, shall we, in terms of ranking all of these. Spider-Man 2002, the first Sam Raimi movie, I'm going to be putting it in S. This is a movie that I think, unfortunately, gets lost in the shuffle in regards to the talks around it and what it does right, and then sometimes what it does wrong. And I think a lot of people get lost in the goofiness and the campiness of the movies and everything when discussing these movies. This is my favorite of the Sam Raimi movies, and I'll talk about why when I get to Spider-Man 2 and 3. So, this is what I consider a perfect Spider-Man movie from a plot structure and story alone. It is literally the story of, the origin story of Peter Parker turning into Spider-Man, learning to develop his powers, and, like, the establishment of him, Mary Jane Watson, Harry Osborn, Uncle Ben, Aunt May, Norman Osborn, just so much. It's just such a good movie for an introduction to Spider-Man. Like, this was the movie that introduced a ton of people to Spider-Man. People probably just knew him from either the comics or, at the time, the 90s cartoon, and maybe some of the video games. But this film is what that existed at the time. But this film is what put Spider-Man on the map as a heavy hitter of a franchise when it comes to comic book movies. So, and like, yeah. And it like Tobey Maguire, I think, fits the kind of Peter Parker that they were going for, where yes, he is a bit mopey, yes, he doesn't really suit the comedic parts that well, and he's a bit awkward and everything, but they luckily write Peter around that. Like, that's the intention with Peter's character and everything. And he does go on a character arc of initially developing his powers, like getting them by being bitten by the spider, developing his powers soon afterwards, and wanting to use his powers to get money, to be able to impress MJ because he has a crush on her. But then you have him go through the lesson of with great power comes great responsibility through Uncle Ben and everything, which is very, very good. And you can tell that they took a lot of inspiration for the Sam Raimi movies from the 90s cartoon, because that was a big thing in the 90s cartoon as well, was Peter's moral center being around Uncle Ben. I know it was probably a thing in it was more than likely a thing in the comics as well, which is why they had it in the 90s series. But the 90s cartoon was very influential at the time for, like, Spider-Man media. To the point where, like, you know, a lot of Venom stories, when new continuities of Spider-Man introduce Venom, a lot of the time they just reuse the setup from the 90s cartoon, not from the comics, because the comics, that was during the Secret War, no, not Secret Wars, but like one of the comic events that that they actually adapted into the animated series later on in its no, not its series finale, but the episodes right before the series finale, um, where you have all these heroes on a different planet, and there's like a moral test and all that shit with the Beyonder and all that shit. The '90s version, from what I understand, is better. Just because they didn't have as many characters, they changed some stuff around, and it just was all for the better. But that in the comics, that event is where Spider-Man got the black suit, and I'll talk more about that when we get to Spider-Man 3. But this is a movie where, um, like, they definitely took a lot of inspiration from the '90s cartoon, as well as the more classic comics from the '60s. Um, and then just made it an early 2000s superhero movie. There is a bit of jank involved. Some of the CGI isn't great, unfortunately. I think that more so has to do with probably when they shot the sequences and how much time they had to render everything. Because as we'll see with the MCU movies, that becomes a problem later on when like Disney unfortunately overworks the special effects studios on these movies, but and Sony a bit. But yeah. But in regards to the story, I just really like that Peter learns the lesson of with great power comes great responsibility. Then he has to learn about the Green Goblin. He has to he finds out who the Goblin is towards the end, where it comes as a big shock. The violence in this movie is actually really good as well. I can still remember several different scenes of the action in this movie, and it is pretty brutal to a big degree. Like, Spider-Man bleeds in this movie. His suit gets torn to shit towards the end of it. And it's just the fisticuffs in it is just very brutal. And to the point where we don't get a lot of action in movies like this today. And that all comes down to Sam Raimi's direction, which I think was great for this movie and Spider-Man 2. Which, speaking of, I will put Spider-Man 2 in A. And I know that that's a hot take. Spider-Man 2 is a very good sequel. It takes what was in the first movie and forwards it and tells a new story. The way that they did Doc Ock in this movie pretty much made him an A-list Spider-Man villain, where they included him in the animated stuff going forward. Like, every single Spider-Man animated show included Doc Ock to some extent, whether or not they tried to copy the backstory from this movie or not, or did their own version. Hell, the first Insomniac game, its main villain is Doc Ock, and they did a very similar story, or they did a story very clearly inspired by the Doc Ock of this movie. But they made it a little bit more, I think, personally relatable to people, rather than the tentacles overwhelming or having a mind of their own and taking over his brain, which is what is confirmed to have happened at the ending of this movie, and then in No Way Home. In case if you forgot, they instead Dr. Octavius in that game is he's developing a degenerative disease where he's losing his ability to walk, and he's pretty much in danger, I think, of becoming a quadriplegic, and he doesn't want that to happen. But then the tentacles somewhat influence his brain, just mainly with how they work, affecting his brain. Whereas here, they have an AI in them that directly takes control of Doc Ock for most of the movie. And I think what they do with Peter and him is really good. Peter's arc in this movie is one where he's feeling like shit, because not only did he lose Uncle Ben in the previous movie, not only did he lose Norman Osborn, and Harry's at odds with Spider-Man, who he wants to find and kill for killing his father, what he thinks, or doing what he thinks is, or basically, Harry thinks that Spider-Man killed his father. He doesn't know that Peter and Spider-Man are the same person yet, but when he finds out, he's noticeably taken aback by it. The one thing I don't like is that Peter doesn't just tell him, look, I didn't kill your father. He accidentally killed himself trying to kill me with his glider. And just explained it really quickly. Instead, Peter doesn't say shit and he just says there are more things happening than you and me. That is a really weird decision to me. Like, I know that Peter needed to be able to track down Otto as quickly as possible because Otto had MJ, but the thing about it is, realistically, Peter, I don't think would actually have said that if he wanted to just make Harry understand about it. To the point where at the beginning of Spider-Man 3, when Harry attacks him as the new Goblin, he quickly tries to explain it as Harry's trying to kill him. But, like, it's just, like, you could have easily done that here and left Harry to think about it after Harry tells you where Doc Ock is. Come the fuck on. Then we have MJ. I liked her in the first movie. I still like her in the first movie. Kirsten Dunst did a really good job portraying MJ in the first movie, which I failed to talk about her when I was talking about the movie. She did such a good job. MJ's character is literally just this person who wants to have a better life than she has had growing up. She grew up with an abusive dad and everything. She wants to move out on her own. She wants to make it big time on Broadway and all that shit, and she's trying to work her way up in the entertainment industry in New York City. She ends up, she's still trying to do that in Spider-Man 2, but because of the fact that she kind of knows that Peter's Spider-Man because she recognizes the kiss that they have at Norman Osborn's funeral at the end of this movie. In this one, she kind of has, or she kind of has romantic feelings for Peter in this movie, but she realistically feels like she's toying with him. He doesn't want to get together with her even though he really wants to, or he feels like he shouldn't get together with her even though he really wants to, specifically because of the fact that he's Spider-Man and he can't let anyone get close to him or else they'll be in danger. Because of what happened to Uncle Ben in this, even though what happened to Uncle Ben wasn't his fault. But yeah. And she knows, or I think she realizes that he has feelings for her, and she just wants him to come right out and say that he has feelings for her, but he won't, and I don't know if she necessarily realizes why, but, like, yeah, and I think he outright tells her he's Spider-Man partway through the movie, and it's like, I really just do not understand why she just doesn't tell him that she reciprocates his feelings and wants to be together with him, because she dates J. Jonah Jameson's son, John Jameson, and almost goes through with marrying him, but she leaves him at the altar literally on their wedding day to go be with Peter, which is very much a dick move. And you can tell that she's trying to have deeper feelings for the guy, but, you know, when she tries to do the kiss with John Jameson, the upside down kiss from the first movie with him, it just doesn't feel the same. So, to me, it just, I don't know. I don't like MJ in this movie that much, like, just at all. Like, Kirsten Dunst is still doing this, like, a similar performance to what she did in the first movie, but in regards to this, I just do not like her in this movie. Everything else I feel is good, because Peter has doubts, and he starts losing his Spider-Man powers. He loses the good eyesight it gave him, he loses his strength, he loses his durability, he loses his ability to shot web, and he even talks to his doctor about it. And, in a hypothetical sense and everything. However, he randomly gets his powers back when he starts talking to MJ at, I think it's a restaurant. And when Doc Ock throws a car at him. I feel like that arc could have had a better ending to it, where Peter gets his confidence back and, like, his powers come back and everything. It's something I think that they would do better in Brand New Day, which, by the way, spoilers for Brand New Day when I get to it. But I don't know. Some things in this movie could have been slightly better written if they went through another draft of it, and maybe they had someone on the team, on the writing team, to be like, should we really be doing this in this way? I don't know. I just do not care. Now, which do I think is better, Spider-Man 2, the theatrical cut, or 2.1? I'm of a mixed opinion. I think that some things are better in Spider-Man 2, the theatrical cut, and I feel like some of the additions made in 2.1 are really good. And I feel like a hybrid of the two that keeps the good scenes, the good versions of scenes or certain things from the theatrical cut, but keeps the extensions to other scenes from the 2.1 cut would be the best of both worlds. 2.1 unfortunately like replaces two different takes of certain things early on in the movie that I really don't care for. First of all, there's the change of Mr. Aziz's go, where instead of the goofy go, he just says it more straight. Go. When Peter arrives at his pizza shop and he tells him to take off and deliver the pizzas that someone ordered. And then later on, when his powers are starting to fluctuate and everything, and he can't swing home, he 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 has to take the elevator down, and then he gets on the elevator with the guy from fucking Lab Rats, and instead of the take that they went with that was actually funny, they go with a take of the guy doing really unfunny like kind of stand-up bits, if I can describe it that way. More so just like improv comedy, because they probably did several different takes with a few different ideas for what they could be talking about in the elevator. The one that they used in the 2.1 cut sucks ass. It's not funny. It tries way too hard to be funny, and it's just not funny. Like it's the improv humor that I think people didn't like in No Way Home, but worse. So yeah. And also improv humor that was done in some of the other MCU movies that I think people didn't like, but worse. Mainly like Thor Ragnarok. But yeah, trust me, you do not want me talking about Thor Ragnarok. You don't want me talking about that shit. But anyways, so yeah, like I said, I think a hybrid cut between the theatrical cut that keeps oh yeah, right. 2.1 also adds a really stupid extension to a scene where Peter he stops someone, I think, who's speeding, like I think a robber or some shit that's speeding through the streets, and he webs up the guy, and then he takes the guy's car, and for some reason takes off his mask while he's driving the car. And that explains how he arrived in a convertible to, or maybe that was Spider-Man 3? No, that was this film. When he arrives to, oh, right, Mary Jane's play. So she is actually successful in this movie. I forgot about that. But yeah, and she is on Broadway, which is great for her. But, like, that is an extension that can just easily be left on the cutting room floor. You can see why Sam Raimi cut it out for the extended, or for the theatrical cut. Keep that shit just to when Peter shows up there. I honestly think that they could have done a quick bit of reshoots to change how Peter got there. I think easily just him arriving in an alleyway as Spider-Man and then quickly changing into his suit would have been good enough. You know, like stopping the car and parking in a curb really quickly, and then or on a curb really quickly, and then swinging off. I think that would have been a much better way to do that, but unfortunately it's not 2003 when they were shooting this movie. So yeah. But I still really like what they do in this. The action is really good, a really good step up, I think, from Spider-Man 1. Especially since the CGI is a lot better. They definitely shot those scenes the earliest so they could actually like work on them. The VFX artists could, and it's really good. And yeah, it's like I said, I think certain things in this movie unfortunately fall a little flat upon further examination, but I like what it's going for, and I like a lot of what it does right. So yeah. Spider-Man 3. Ooh, I'm going to put this in D. No, actually no, C. So this has two different cuts as well, the theatrical cut and the editor's cut, which is more, the editor's cut tries to be more close to the actual shooting script, whereas the theatrical cut was made the way that it was because of executive meddling, mainly from, I think, Avi Arad. I could be wrong, or Arad, however you pronounce his last name. So Spider-Man 3 is a very heavy step down from Spider-Man 2. Um, Unfortunately, it inherits problems that Spider-Man 2 started, mainly with MJ. MJ, I hate her in this movie. I genuinely fucking hate her in this movie. She is, to me, a bit detestable in Spider-Man 2, but at the very least, she comes to her senses at the end and actually goes to Peter and says, and tells him basically, I have feelings for you too, let's be together, damn the consequences. That, at the very least, is a redemption moment for her, I think, in regards to, like, how she treated him in the movie. So I will give her that point. Spider-Man 3, though, holy fuck, she treats him like he's a piece of shit. Like, and don't get me wrong, in some places in this movie he definitely is, but like the thing about him is like, so she doesn't do well in the new play she's on Broadway, which is a musical. She gets a really bad critic review in the newspaper that says that her voice didn't project enough. And rather than, maybe doing more rehearsals before the next before the next showing of the play, they could have like the directors could have worked with her to help her learn how to project her voice more and everything, or even just give her a microphone that she could wear on like her ear or something to play through any like speakers in the auditorium. They just kick her from the play and replace her with an understudy, and it just that's just shitty. That is just shitty. Like, I understand it's show business, but that's just fucking shitty. So she is upset by it, obviously. Peter tries to help her in regards to like saying, I understand what you're going through. Spider-Man gets attacked in the media all the time. He tries to relate to her, but because it's not directly related to what she's talking about, she just treats him like he's being a piece of shit and not like actually thinking of her feelings, even though he fucking is. And then like, oh my fucking god, I hate MJ in this. And then like they don't talk for a bit. Then when Harry, so okay. So then Harry, they're continuing his arc from the first two movies, where he wants revenge on Spider-Man for, he thinks, killing his dad, which is understandable. However, because they wanted to shoehorn Venom into this movie, they, instead of weaving both plots in, which I think they could have easily done, they unfortunately, quickly early on in one of the first few scenes, have him develop amnesia by getting hit on the head really hard. And I know that that can happen in real life. I'm not knocking them for finding that kind of solution. However, Harry, like, he absorbed a perfected version of the goblin gas that gave Norman his superhuman abilities, and also the split personality of the Green Goblin, which I don't know why apparently people thought it may or may not be a split personality and it might just be Norman going crazy or him just like letting his true feelings out. No Way Home ended up confirming that it was a split personality, and in other continuities, he Norman and the Green Goblin are split personalities of each other. So I always took it as split personalities. Like, I don't know why other people didn't. I don't know. It's just weird. Because like, I understand it could be played either way, and whichever way that they wanted to play with it in the future, they could. But like at the same time, yeah. Um, but yeah. So he should have more durability, like his father did, and like Spider-Man did. So he shouldn't really have developed the amnesia in my mind. But the fact that he did is just okay. So they have him be amnesiac for a while. He forgot a good amount of things that happened, if not everything that happened over the last several years. Uh, in between, some point, midway through, I think the first movie's timeline and the beginning of Spider-Man 3. And yeah, no, that's just a really lazy way of getting Harry out of the way. I think they could have easily done something better with that if they really needed him out of the way to develop the Venom storyline. So basically, after he remembers, just randomly, um, which I get it for amnesia, like randomly your memories can come back and everything, depending on what kind of amnesia you have. But it just randomly comes back, and man, I just think that that's kind of lazy. It randomly comes back just in time for Harry to be a villain again. And then, so his plot is to blackmail MJ into breaking up with Peter to attack his heart as Norman wants him to do, because he's going crazy and he sees Norman in the mirror and everything. But it's the Green Goblin personality in place of Norman's. Really fucking weird. Which granted, I think did happen towards the end of Spider-Man 2, maybe, or yeah, I think it did. But yeah, which granted, I think they kind of did in the '90s show as well, but it was at least, I think, better there. But yeah, I need to rewatch the '90s series to be sure about that. But yeah, so then, uh, what else? So he blackmails MJ into breaking up with Peter. She does, rather than just telling him, look, Harry remembers everything. He thinks that you killed his father. And let's just pretend we're breaking up here so you can go deal with him later. I really don't understand. It's a plot contrivance because, like, even though MJ and Peter are going through a rough patch because of how much of a bitch she is, like, it just, like, and I'm not even kidding about that either. I'm not being sexist or anything. That's just literally what happens. Like, if you watch the movie, um, she could have easily done that, and then I don't know, but they needed it. They needed the plot contrivance of that to happen so that Peter is in an emotional state low enough to to uh put on the black suit and go after Harry, and then start his, like, descent into infamy, I think. Maybe. I don't know if that's the right word, but, like, his descent into emo Peter, I guess. So yeah, where he goes to fight Harry. Harry then tries to throw a pumpkin bomb at him, but he throws it back at him, and that ends up scarring half of Harry's face and everything, and I think his body. But yeah, and then that takes Harry out of the film until towards the end. But yeah, um, so that plot is just really fucking stupid. Um, so yeah, and then the shit with Venom. Oh my god. So Venom being in this movie was a thing that was required by the studio. They saw how much or how well Spider-Man 2 did, and it was mainly Avi Arad, I think, who wanted Venom in the movie. So, and because he was a producer at Sony and a producer on these movies, he, like, forced Sam Raimi to put Venom in this movie, even though Sam Raimi admitted at some point that he wasn't a big fan of the character and everything. And the main villain he wanted to focus on for this movie was Sandman, and try to do with him what he did with Doc Ock. And I'll talk about Sandman's plot in a bit. So in regards to that, um, Sandman or Venom, they get really lazy with it, and instead of giving Venom a bigger, like, introduction into the story, because they copy the '90s series a bit with Venom's introduction and everything, though instead of it being a symbiote from outer space that comes down on a or in a spaceship and everything with John Jameson and the other guy, like in the '90s show, which would have been cool to see in this movie. And then Spider-Man goes to save them and gets the symbiote caught on him. Instead, it just there's a random meteorite that contains it that crashes into the park where Peter and MJ are, and it gets out of the meteorite and then latches onto the back of Peter's motorcycle, and when he and MJ are going home, and after stargazing and everything, and I'm just like, that was just really underwhelming and everything. They could have easily done better with that scene and that introduction of Venom, or the Venom symbiote more so. So, then it when Peter is asleep and not doing his Spider-Manning and everything, I think after the fight with MJ, or argument with MJ or whatever, it creeps out and latches onto him and makes a black version of his regular Spider-Man suit with different spider emblems and eyes. Now, I talked about this when I did my suit ranking for the Insomniac Spider-Man 2 game, but I love the black suit. I know it's a love or hate it kind of thing. The black suit in this is just awesome. I love it so much. Like, I don't even give a fuck that it's not comic accurate and it's just a black and silver version of his regular suit. I still fucking love it. It is so fucking good. I don't understand how people don't like it. Like, it's really awesome. And the fact that it is different from the comics and the TV shows is just, in my opinion, a good thing. Now, Spectacular Spider-Man would take that and then have it mutate into the classic comic book version of the suit, which then Marvel Spider-Man 2 would take inspiration from. But I really do like the black suit in this movie. It looks awesome. So then we get scenes of Peter basically being emo, like a mid 2000s emo kid. Like, he looks like he should be listening to fucking Fall Out Boy and My Chemical Romance, because that was the emo scene of the time. And like, I don't know, he genuinely looks like fucking he's going for a Pete Wentz type look. And basically, to try and get back at MJ, he takes Gwen Stacy out on a date because they take a class together at their university, and she shows a bit of interest in him. Oh yeah, one of the other things that MJ is pissed at Peter about is the fact that during a public event where Spider-Man is at and shows up to, he has Gwen Stacy, who is presenting the thing, give him a kiss, the same upside down kiss that MJ gave him in the first movie, and that's what pissed MJ off. Never mind the fact that she did the same fucking thing to John Jameson in the fucking second movie. Peter doesn't know that, so at least it's not established that Peter knows that, because she didn't tell him. So, she's apparently allowed to get fucking angry at him. God, fucking cry me a river. Anyways, so he takes her out to the bar that MJ is working at, and like, makes a scene trying to make her jealous and everything, makes an ass of himself, and that's what causes him specifically to get rid of the symbiote. Why? That's not a really... Oh my fucking god. That is a really fucking stupid reason for Peter to give up the symbiote. Am I wrong in thinking that? Like, what? Come the fuck on. So, they recreate the scene from the 90s show where Peter's at a bell tower, which is above a church, where he uses the bell because of the sound, to strip himself of the Venom symbiote. And then, oh my god, fucking Eddie Brock. So they introduced Eddie Brock into this movie early on, played by Topher Grace. I don't necessarily mind his casting. I don't mind. I like that 70s show. He's not the Eddie Brock from the comics or the other or the TV shows up until that point, but they cast him specifically because they wanted him to be a mirror for Tobey Maguire. As like this, like, more, I guess, lean, uh, kind of scrawny, nerdy white guy who, um, like, isn't a meathead or anything like Eddie Brock usually is in, uh, the other, like, versions of Spider-Man where he shows up. Um, they wanted that, but Eddie Brock is, in the words of, Geekvolution, Captain Logan from Geekvolution, he's living in his own little world. He genuinely thinks the world revolves around him. He's very narcissistic. He's way too the fuck confident in himself. He thinks he and Gwen are going out just because they had coffee one time, and then he just is just a piece of shit. And then, like, because Peter ruins his gig at the Daily Bugle after he photoshops an image of Spider-Man to make Spider-Man look like he's robbing a bank in his new black suit, and Peter points out the fucking photoshopping and everything. Peter tells him to get religion if he wants forgiveness. Um, he then goes to the church that Peter goes to, and he prays to God to kill Peter Parker. Like, I'm sorry, the fuck? What is wrong with you? So yeah, so then when he hears the bell and Peter yelling from up top in the bell tower, the Venom symbiote latches on to Eddie. They form Venom, which he doesn't look a lot like he does in the comics or the cartoons or whatever, but you know. So yeah, and then he teams up with Sandman to kill Peter. The Venom symbiote is shown to be alive, but it's more like kind of a feral beast as opposed to having its own intellect and consciousness like it does in every other version of Spider-Man. And oh man, there's really no explanation as to why the Venom symbiote wants to just kill Peter. It's mainly, I think, a thing that Eddie wants to do. It's funny how much this film and the Insomniac Spider-Man 2 game share in regards to how well they treat Venom. Venom is alive and conscious in that game, but it still has similar motivations and everything that it does in this movie. It's just slightly more intelligent. And then it latches on to Harry rather than Eddie Brock, which I don't really mind, but just saying. But yeah. And then Peter ends up killing the symbiote by using one of the pumpkin bombs, and Eddie dies with it in the explosion, and that's just how that shit ends. And I think I just said Venom teams up with Sandman. So Sandman, his whole plot is trying to tie back into the first Spider-Man movie, trying to make it like a wraparound kind of thing. Where it's trying to be like George Lucas's quote, "It's poetry, it rhymes." Which I can certainly applaud the effort, and Sam Raimi definitely wanted to try to make Sandman like he did with Doc Ock, but the thing about Sandman is that he's just kind of there. Basically, he is an escaped convict from Rikers who falls into a super collider, which that's not explained what the fuck it is and what kind of test they're trying to do on the sand and everything. And until No Way Home, where he straight up says he fell into a super collider. It's really fucking weird that they don't like address that at all. So the super collider makes some small grains of sand get in his DNA, and it changes his DNA, and he starts turning into living sand. So yeah, so Peter deals with him a few times, and he also just basically wants to make sure his daughter, who is seemingly terminally ill, not sure with what, but just a disease, he wants her to live, obviously, because he wants to be a good father and everything. He tried to steal money to pay for her health care because America sucks and doesn't have universal health care. And but he got put in jail for it for 5 years, and then he broke out. He's the one who ended up killing Uncle Ben. Peter initially thinks it's on purpose. Sandman doesn't say what actually happened until the end. But then Peter, um, he later tells Peter that it was by accident and everything, and the guy from the first movie that Peter sees and tracks down and thought was the one who killed his Uncle Ben ends up being not. And yeah, that retcon I don't necessarily mind too much, but because I don't think it affects Peter's arc from the first movie too much. But it's just kind of a dumb retcon that I don't think they needed to make, but they did anyways, and it's just whatever in my opinion. But yeah. But as I said, he's just kind of there, and unfortunately, not enough time is really given to him for you to really give too much of a shit about him. He has a tragic backstory and everything, but he doesn't get enough character development to really warrant any real positive reaction to him. He's just kind of there. He's an anti-villain. He's not really too involved in the plot, and then when he shows up, while it is fun and I do like the CGI and everything and the action around him, um yeah, he's just not great. Um and then there's a really dumb sequence where Peter in the black suit thinks he's gotten rid of him when he like makes him like uh get lost in some water, which is just like he's living sand. He's just going to turn into mud and then reconstitute at some point soon. And then Peter is fully okay with having killed Sandman. Uh by that point, Peter really should be, and I know he was influenced by the black suit, but like even when he's not wearing the black suit and he talks to Aunt May, he's fine with it, but she's appalled. And yeah, she would be. You know? Just so much fucking wrong with this movie, I swear. It's just not a great note to go out on. Then it ends on a downer note of Harry dying during the battle with Venom and Sandman, and then MJ and Peter seemingly not getting back together, which is fine, but like there was no Spider-Man 4, so we don't know what the fuck happened until No Way Home, where they established that Peter and MJ got back together at some point and worked things out. Which good for them. But it took 14 years for us to learn that shit. At the very least, it's a good note for them to go out on, but like 14 years? Really? I'm so glad we didn't get Spider-Man 4, by the way. But yeah. So the theatrical cut is like that. The editor's cut is also like that, but the editor's cut does a few different things. So if you've never seen it, I actually recommend going to watch it, even if you've seen the theatrical cut. The editor's cut, for one, uses different music. It uses the original score that I think it's Michael Giacchino made for the movie. Or not, no, I don't think it's him. The composer used for this, including pieces that were scrapped from the finished or the theatrical cut of the movie because Avi Arad and a few of the other producers wanted some returning pieces from Danny Elfman's score from the first two movies, and everything. So that's a good plus. We also got reintegrations of scenes that were either only seen in the trailers or just in the just I think known through the screenplay, as well as some deleted scenes and whatnot, and like set photos and everything. Not every deleted scene, unfortunately, got reconstituted into the editor's cut, which is a shame. It's not even on the Blu-ray that had the editor's cut on it. But yeah, but yeah, and it shuffles around a few scenes, like I said earlier, to be closer to the shooting script, and then takes out certain scenes. It also takes out certain lines and everything. The intent was more so the addiction metaphor, which is kind of in the theatrical cut, but is more pronounced in the editor's cut. This is, I think, where a lot of people got the thing of the symbiote being an addiction metaphor for Peter, and that's how some people apparently thought it was supposed to be in Insomniac Spider-Man 2, even though it wasn't, and I don't know how the fuck you think it is, if you actually played the game and paid attention to the story and how the characters act and everything. But anyways, yeah, and in that, I think it actually really does a good job selling you on the addiction metaphor with Peter continually taking on and off the black suit and looking like he's coming down from a drug-induced high. When he does that, I think that is a really good thing that they added back into the movie through the editor's cut. They also order certain scenes, like I just said, that were in the theatrical cut to match the shooting script, which I think in some ways is better, but because of the footage at hand that they chose and the fact that they didn't have certain alternate takes or other things that they could have used to transition in a few places, some of the transitions are a bit jarring in the new cut, mainly when I think when Peter, yeah, when he uh like throws the pumpkin bomb back at Harry, he walks into the camera frame with his hoodie open slightly to see the symbiote version of his spider emblem on the front of his suit with the black suit and everything showing through, and that was meant to transition to him having it under his normal clothes and just walking on the street. But they reordered that to, I think, be before Peter goes to humiliate Eddie Brock, or a different scene that was in that like cluster of scenes there. Um, there's a good video out there that compares the two cuts. I recommend watching that if you want to know what I'm talking about. But yeah, and I think that actually, I think that works out better in terms of the order of things presented. But yeah, it's not a director's cut, unfortunately, and there are more scenes that were left out. Mainly a scene of Eddie after he has the symbiote, but outside of the symbiote suit, or outside of the Venom suit, talking to Sandman slash Flint Marko when he's at a playground, I believe, that his daughter's at and everything, and he makes himself a sandcastle for her, which is reconstituted into the theatrical cut, but it ends there. And you do actually get more scenes with Sandman that show him and his daughter and his ex-wife a lot more, which I think helps with caring more for the character and everything and his situation, which is good. I think that there are good things reconstituted into the editor's cut, but I honestly think that because of the fact that they didn't reconstitute certain footage that they should have, and Sam Raimi wasn't involved, so he couldn't give his final say and final approvals and everything, and then they didn't have alternate takes or different takes of certain things to work with. It unfortunately comes off as a little rushed and a little incomplete. But I think it is a better representation of what Sam Raimi was going for than the theatrical cut. So if you have the time and you actually want to watch it, I recommend watching the editor's cut if you can track it down. It's available on digital platforms, and it is available in a Blu-ray set from 2017. It was made for that release, because I think they were making an alternate score version of the audio track for the theatrical cut that put back in the cut music that was originally intended for it. And they were just like, "Hey, Sony, can we do this?" And Sony was just like, "Yeah, sure, just get it done by this day." And they did what they could. So yeah. So I honestly think that if we had a better recut of the movie that was a director's cut, which I'm really surprised that Sony hasn't done by this point, I think that we could easily just have the best version of Spider-Man 3 available. But yeah. So this movie is a C. The Amazing Spider-Man, I'm going to give it an A. I think it, for the most part, is a fine reboot for the time. Unfortunately, its tone is heavily influenced by The Dark Knight, because The Dark Knight had come out 4 years before this movie. And everything, so it's a little bit more grimdark and dour than it maybe should be for a Spider-Man movie. Not to say it doesn't have any fun bits, but it, like I said, it's going for a more grounded, gritty, realistic kind of thing and feel and everything. But yeah, and it unfortunately reeks of that time, which also affected the Spider-Man suit, which is trying to look like it's something that any kid can make, but like no. Sorry. But yeah. In terms of this movie, though, I think it does a lot of things well. I think that Andrew Garfield fits very well for this Peter and everything. out of all three of the Peters that we've gotten in live action for these movies, I think that he definitely is the best fit between both Peter and Spider-Man. Thing though is his Peter definitely comes off more kind of more like a loner, but would be kind of cool if he maybe changed his attitude or was friends with the right people. Yeah, and he's certainly more conventionally handsome than Tobey Maguire was. Not that Tobey was a bad-looking guy, but yeah. Um, and they don't. I think they don't really do or do enough to really sell that this Peter would be a loner with not a lot of friends or any friends or anything. So yeah, I really wish that they had Harry Osborn in this movie or someone to be Peter's friend, so that he wasn't just this weird loner character and everything. I think the relationship between him and Gwen Stacy is really good. I feel like their relationship is very natural, has a lot of chemistry to it, owed to um, Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone's amazing chemistry, which probably helped with the fact that they would eventually go out in real life and everything for a few years, and that's honestly pretty good. Like it's probably the most realistic part of the movie, which is a definite improvement from Spider-Man 2 and 3 with MJ. So, yeah, giving Peter his first girlfriend from the comics was really good because MJ was a later girlfriend after Gwen Stacy died in the comics. So, yeah, and Gwen Stacy is definitely one of the best love interests in a superhero movie. She is very capable. She is very like what is the word? She's very I'm trying to remember the word. Like independent. She's very good in of herself. She is very self-sufficient. There we go. She's very self-sufficient, and I like that. I don't think it's I think it was her and Pepper Potts maybe from the Iron Man movies that that are like that, though her especially. We don't get too many movies, unfortunately, where the um the main character's love interest is at least in superhero movies, is very capable and self-sufficient and everything, and very smart, very just able to do what they need to do at the times that they need to do them. And the fact that she helps him um, defeat Lizard is really good. It's like half a repeat of how the first Iron Man movie ends, but also not. And the plot of this movie would go on to inspire part of like half the plot of, or the Doc Ock plot, half of it in the first Insomniac game. You ever notice that? You ever notice how basically they're the exact same, where they try to create a pandemic and then they're stopped by Spider-Man after that? Like, yeah, it's just in this film, the Lizard is trying to turn everyone else into lizards by having this shit put into the air, whereas Doc Ock was trying to make people sick. Um, so yeah, um, the Lizard plot is unfortunately kind of just there. It's unfortunately a result of this needing to be a superhero movie and needing a villain. The thing, though, is they have extra footage of Doc Connors and his family and everything just left on the cutting room floor. I don't know if it was included in the deleted scenes on the Blu-ray, but like there is more footage that we know of that was not put into the movie of Connors interacting with his family more, and we could have easily used more of that to make us actually like Doc Connors and see more of his side of everything. But yeah, basically, yeah, he is trying to use lizard DNA to regrow his arm, but it fucks up and it transforms him into a lizard man, which perfectly Spider-Man, perfectly in line with the origins in the comics and other adaptations of Spider-Man, perfectly fine. It's just that we don't give a shit about Doc Connors that much, unfortunately, outside of just being like, oh no, that happened, and being sad for him, you know? They revived that from the Sam Raimi movies, which I think, yeah, they showed Doc Connors a lot, and I think Spider-Man 2 and 3, and I think they were setting him up to appear in maybe a Spider-Man 4 or 5 as the Lizard. But unfortunately, that actor didn't get to do that because the Spider-Man 4 movie was canceled, and I'm actually glad it was, considering some of the shit that we have gotten in terms of details about that movie. Ugh. Um, but yeah, I do like them using the like mechanical web shooters as opposed to the bioorganic ones that Toby's Spider-Man has, and then just showing Peter doing more like inventing and science and all that I think was good. Um so yeah. Showing his glasses, like his vision wasn't really improved by his glasses. His glasses seem to be more like reading glasses, like he's like farsighted and he just needs the glasses for like nearsighted stuff. It's one of those things where it's like kind of a realistic thing, but also it's just like okay. But yeah, but there are also things in this movie that feel like a direct response to the Sam Raimi movies. Like I said, the love interest actually being good. The way Uncle Ben tries to say the "with great power comes great responsibility" thing, while it is a bit more naturalistic in terms of the dialogue and everything, it feels like they're skirting around just directly saying that particular line in this movie. Um, but yeah, and then there's some stupid shit in this movie. Like when okay, when Peter goes to a nearby convenience store and like wants to get a milk, the guy for some reason, he's like 2 cents short, I believe. The guy for some reason will not let him like take a penny out of the thing to just fill in for the rest of his change that he needs, and it's like why? Like, I have never seen shit like that in real life at all. Maybe there's some assholes like that working at convenience stores, but it's like, come on, it's only 2 cents. Who the fuck gives a shit? But yeah. Then you have the guy who kills Uncle Ben coming into the convenience store, robbing him, and throwing Peter the milk that he wanted to get. And for some reason, the cashier wanted Peter to help stop the guy. Which is it's basically similar to how Peter um did not initially want to help the guy who was organizing the wrestling thing, but the guy who was doing the wrestling thing was a major asshole to Peter. Peter was promised $3,000 for 3 minutes with Bonesaw. He did it in only 2 minutes, but that really should have given him the like $2,000 instead of the three, if the logic were to make sense. But the guy, being an asshole, just only gives him $100. It's like, what? Peter would have had to sign a contract for that. Like, Peter could easily just fucking sue him for that. Like, granted, Peter doesn't have a lawyer and he doesn't have the money for a lawyer, but I think he could have made up for that if the lawyer was willing to, like, take his fees from winning the court case. And they would have had to settle out of court. But yeah, that's just so fucking awful. But here, the guy doesn't really do anything. He's a dick, but he's not an asshole like the guy in the first movie. Or in the first Sam Raimi movie. It's just like, yeah, and I don't understand why he thinks that Peter was gonna help him. This is really fucking stupid. But then Uncle Ben's just randomly walking on the sidewalk that the guy comes out of, and he tries to stop him for some reason, even though the guy has a fucking visible gun, I believe, in his hand, and then he gets fucking shot. Like, yeah, dickhead, what the fuck did you think was gonna happen? Like, what? Like, I think he tries to, like, wrestle the guy, but, like, he gets shot for his troubles. What the fuck was wrong with you? You idiot? Like, what? Why? Oh my god. So, yeah, just a bunch of stupid shit happens in this movie just because it needs to happen, and in stupid-ass ways. I don't know. The first Sam Raimi movie, like, handle things very well. Like I said, it's a bit awkward and it's a bit of its time, but it still functions as well as it needed to. You know? This movie, no. Like, they tried to go out of their way to be different from the first Sam Raimi movie with this one, but, like, eh. And then, yeah, so, yeah, the plot is very simple with this one. I do like what it does well, but what it does either meh or badly is just kind of painful. Yeah. But yeah, still give it an A because it's okay. But yeah, and I think it's on the level with Spider-Man 2. It has different problems than Spider-Man 2, but I think it is on the same level. Amazing Spider-Man 2 gets a D. So here's the thing about Spider-Man 3 versus Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is worse. Spider-Man 3 at the very least has a coherent plot that, like, you can easily follow, and even though it has two villains, I don't think it does too much for the movie outside of just not having enough time devoted to either. Um, because, like, it still has a through line that you can follow. It has multiple things going on, but they deal with them in different spots in the movie in their own time and everything. Like I said, you could have easily just split Spider-Man 3 into a Spider-Man 3 and 4 and devoted more time to them, like an extra couple hours. I think that would have been better for this one, for this movie, and it would have allowed them to flesh out a bunch of things. It would have allowed them to do certain things better. And it just would have been all the better for it. This is a movie where you expand the time, and it would have just benefited the movie, and the story that they were trying to tell. Whereas Amazing Spider-Man 2, there's a shit ton of things going on in this movie, and there didn't need to be. Like, they're just disparate things that don't make sense and don't really need to be here, that are just not great. So, the main plot of this movie is Norman Osborn dies of some kind of fucking disease, that retroviral hypoplasia, I think is what it's fucking called. Whatever the fuck that even means. And, it's a genetic disease that Harry finds out that he has, and, after his father dies, he goes to Peter. He thinks that Peter knows Spider-Man just because he took a picture of him. And I remember seeing a comment about this recently for this movie. Someone pointed out the fact that Harry thinks Peter knows Spider-Man because he takes the photos of him for the Daily Bugle. And that being, I think, the same thing that happens in Spider-Man 2. With Harry and everything. The thing, though, is a lot of the pictures that Peter takes of Spider-Man in the Raimi trilogy, they look kind of sloppy. They look like he didn't think things through in terms of the angles and everything, that where he was taking the pictures from and everything. So it would at least kind of make sense if someone looked at a lot of the pictures and be like, how the fuck did you get that angle? And everything, you know? Whereas Amazing Spider-Man 2, the pictures that Harry gets from the newspapers, they actually look like Peter put some thought into it and, like, put the cameras that he was using at certain angles and certain distances to, like, be able to take pictures that didn't look like he obviously fucking took them in the fucking Spider-Man suit. You know? So, yeah, that's also pointed out by Captain Logan in his Geekvolution retrospective on the movie for Superhero Rewind. And, like, yeah, it's like, fucking A. So, yeah, so he wants Spider-Man's blood, Harry. He wants Spider-Man's blood to try and, like, mix it with his blood in a lab to try and find or create an antidote for the genetic disease that he has. Peter doesn't want to do that because of how dangerous it may be. It's not even necessarily what would you call it? A secret identity thing. Peter just doesn't want to do it because he's just kind of being a dick. So, yeah, it's like Peter could have easily just said, okay, but let me have supervision over what you do with my blood as Spider-Man. He could have easily said that, and I doubt that Harry would have had a problem with that. He could have Harry would have probably just been like, oh yeah, no, I completely get it. I understand that. That's fine. And just let him do it. You know, just let him into his lab and everything and just be supervising and everything. You know, and that would have been a way more interesting, like, plot thread than what we ended up in this movie. So Peter says no. Harry gets pissed at Spider-Man, and because we had to set up the Sinister Six, Harry eventually becomes the Green Goblin, when for some fucking reason, even though Harry's 18 years old, his, like, the disease that affected his father that didn't affect his father until, like, I don't know, he was in his, like, 50s or 60s. It starts affecting Harry for some reason, and he needs a quick fix to his dilemma. So he puts on a suit that I think his father developed for himself that's supposed to either slow down or stop the disease from going any further. And, like, it becomes, like, so fucking, like, mutated and misshapen and all that. He basically looks like fucking Tom Paris in the episode Threshold from Star Trek Voyager when he's all mutated and shit after he breaks the warp barrier. Um, although just not as bad. And, like, he somehow figures, he just, because the script says so, realizes that Peter is Spider-Man, possibly because Gwen Stacy's there. Okay, maybe. I don't fucking actually know why he realizes it. Maybe I missed something. It's been a while since I've seen this movie, so I could have missed something or just forgotten about something. But, like, heh? Um, but yeah, but then he's eventually defeated by Spider-Man, I think. Actually, no, he's not defeated by Spider-Man. He takes Gwen Stacy up, uh, lets her go, and she dies after Peter, like, tries to save her. I'll get to that in a second. And he is somehow, like, better in one of the last few scenes of the movie, and I guess he's gonna form he's either gonna form the Sinister Six or try to work on an actual, like, antidote to his fucking genetic disease. I don't know what the fuck they were planning on doing in a possible Amazing Spider-Man 3. Like, what? And then Harry's relationship with Peter. The fact that he wasn't in the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, not even mentioned at all, is a fucking problem, because it's just like they try to make you believe that these two are lifelong friends, but they haven't seen each other in 8 years. The last time they saw each other was when they were 10. Like, excuse the fuck out of me? Like, how does that make any like, yeah, it's nice seeing a childhood friend after a while, but, like, they would not be as chummy as they are when they meet up with each other. It's funny because the Harry plot in this would also inspire Insomniac's Spider-Man 2. Like, it is funny how much these films very much influence the Insomniac games. Some in good places, some in bad. It's just funny. And they try to do things better, but, like, unfortunately, the writers of the second game were not equipped to do that. And then also Insomniac scrapped a bunch of shit that, like, probably would have helped. Because they were running over budget, and then Sony told them, hey, get this finished by this date. So yeah. And then on top of that, they made the game over like 3 years instead of 2, or instead of 5, like they probably should have, and then let everything get too far out of hand. Anyways, so yeah, although I think that game handles it a bit better than here, especially with, like, since they use the Venom symbiote and everything. But yeah, and the fact that Harry and Peter are adults, and it's only been like a few years since Peter's seen Harry and everything. But yeah, and they're actually adults. But anyways, but yeah, so that plot isn't good. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking with it, but yeah. So then we have Electro in this movie. Oh boy. So because of changing attitudes when it comes to comic book movies and Avengers doing gangbusters in 2012, the same year that this movie was released, but I think that movie came out first. Comic book movies started to be, unless you're the fucking DCEU, shifted in a more overall fun and light-hearted trajectory, like in the early 2000s. But, like, in a more in just a better way, I think, than a lot of those movies turned out. So yeah, so this movie tries to have a similar tone to the MCU at the time, and unfortunately, that tone clashes hard with the more realistic world presented in the first movie, which I think they try to mesh with the Harry plot, but when you get to the Electro plot, it turns into a straight up fucking cartoon. So, oh my god. Electro! They changed him from the comics. Granted, he wasn't much of a character from what I understand, so I don't really give two shits about that, but, Basically, rather than being more like his 616 counterpart and just having this suit and like yellow electricity and everything, they made him more like the Ultimate Comics, like Electro, which the Amazing Spider-Man actually takes a lot from the Ultimate Comics in terms of inspiration. Uh, so yeah, and I think that's fine. But like, yeah, so they basically get him bitten by radioactive electric eels, which not only changes his DNA, I guess, and makes him an electricity being, somehow fixes the gap in his teeth and turns him basically into Dr. Manhattan. Now, I was familiar with the ultimate version of Electro because he was in Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. Um, However, you can't expect people who just watch these movies and don't play any of the Spider-Man video games or read the comics or watch the TV shows to get that. So while I'm not too perturbed by him being blue and shit because of the fact that there's precedence for it in the source material, um, it's just like, why does he turn blue and everything? But yeah, and then there's the fact that he is just, I don't know what the fuck they were thinking with his personality. His personality is similar to Eddie Brock's in Spider-Man 3, where this guy has got some kind of form of fucking psychosis. He seems to be a fucking narcissistic asshole who is also a loner and everything and just fucking nuts. Um, and to the point where he obsesses over Spider-Man. Jamie Foxx does his best, but you can't fucking do a great job with a character like this unless if you play it like a fucking horror movie, and they don't do that in this movie with Electro before he becomes a comic book villain. Um, and uh when he becomes Electro specifically, he just becomes even more nuts, and he for some reason thinks Spider-Man hates him for no other reason than Spider-Man wants to stop him from causing destruction in Times Square. Okay. Okay. I don't understand it, but okay. So yeah. Um and then like his fight scene towards the end of the movie, in the last fight scene of the movie, is fine. If you're there for just the action, it is fine. It is perfectly entertaining. Um but he dies trying to, I think, hack computers and shit and like take over the city's power grid or some shit. I forget what the fuck he's even doing because it's not that memorable and it doesn't make any sense. Um, and also it's been a bit since I've seen this movie, like I said, but I just, ooh, like, yeah, no. Uh, at the very least, Spider-Man 3 had a villain that, or an anti-villain that was connected to Peter from the previous two movies, and Harry, an anti-villain that wasn't really that bad of a guy. It's just that he's rough around the edges and everything, and he's just had some bad circumstances in life that led to where the fuck he is now. And then Eddie Brock is just nuts. We don't really have that here. We have two villains that are just not that well thought out or written, and oof, like, Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah, no. There's a reason why this is probably I think it's the worst performing Spider-Man movie to date, and there's a reason why this movie's been mocked so much over the last 12 years. So, yeah. Um, and it's like you can understand why Andrew Garfield felt disillusioned by the final product, because I think even he said that what they shot was not the movie that they envisioned, and clearly there was a lot of like studio meddling in it, which is why Sony initially wanted to replace him with a different actor for Amazing Spider-Man 3. But when they saw the writing on the wall and no one really wanted an Amazing Spider-Man 3, they rebooted the series into the MCU with Spider-Man Homecoming. But I will get to that in a second. So this movie is just not that good. It has a lot of shit going on. There's a lot of baffling decisions and everything. Mainly in some places the music as well, because it was Hans Zimmer with Pharrell Williams, I think, and they made some really weird fucking decisions. Like, there's a montage of Peter in his bedroom, and you've probably seen at least a clip of this, even if you haven't seen the movie, where they play that song, whatever the fuck it's called, but I remember the chorus is for you, that song, over a montage that I don't understand why they play that song there. It's just really weird. I don't know. Um, it just does not fit. And then Electro makes fun of Spider-Man by playing the Itsy Bitsy Spider while he's like zipping between the like electrical uh the like lightning rods or whatever the fuck they're called at that power plant. So or lab or whatever the fuck it is. But yeah, holy fuck. I just do not care for this movie. Now, it does a few things well. I think the color palette is fine, or is good. The CGI is very good. It holds up a lot better years later. The suit is really good. When I did my Spider-Man 2 suit ranking video, I think I put this suit at a very high place. It's just very good. Uh, Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone are still good. Oh, right. Gwen Stacy's death. I forgot about that. So, the first Spider Man movie to have the main love interest of the main character die towards the end of it. Now, anyone familiar with the comics would probably have seen that coming at some point. I don't think it should have happened in this movie, though. It maybe should have happened at the end of a third Amazing Spider Man movie instead of at the end of this one. Um, Basically, she, like I said, gets involved in trying to help Peter defeat Electro, and she just dies for her troubles because she gets swapped or snatched up by Harry as the Green Goblin, and then let go. Peter tries to save her, but when his webs latch onto Gwen, I think it's a mix of her neck getting snapped as well as it because they have a sound effect for it over the footage. It also looks like her head gets really badly fucking just like conked on the I think it's is it I think it's concrete below her, the floor below her when she almost reaches it. And I think it's a fusion of a few different things, and she dies. She dies from that shit. And that causes Peter to go into a depression for a while. And then he eventually um, gets out of his funk and uh, soldiers on and goes back to being Spider-Man, which I think is an okay way to end the movie. It's just, eh, you know. There was a deleted scene. Right, Peter's parents. I forgot. Peter's parents in these movies, they tried to go the whole, like, I think secret agent angle, which I think is a thing in the Ultimate Comics. Um, but, like, they're not really in, outside of a flashback at the beginning, they're not really in the first Amazing Spider-Man movie much. And then Amazing Spider-Man 2, they're in an action scene in the beginning of the movie that really does not need to be there and doesn't make any sense to still be there. And then kind of established to be dead. But then there's a deleted scene towards the end of the movie where Peter's at Gwen's grave, and his father just randomly shows up. God, I'm glad that they cut that from the movie. There's also cut footage of Mary Jane being in the movie, played by Shailene Woodley, I think her name is. Which that would have also been just too much for this movie, so that's fine to be cut. Yeah, no, I just don't know what the fuck they were. The Rhino scenes are fine, with Paul Giamatti clearly having a really fun time playing the character. He's hamming it up like mad, and the Russian accent he gives the character is entertaining. I will give him that. Because it's Paul Giamatti. He can be fun. And yeah, but yeah, no, just like I just don't know. It's just why this movie? Why this movie? There's some fun to be had, but like holy fuck, when you take this as like a complete product, it's like bruh. This is Spider-Man 3 if Spider-Man 3 went completely off the rails. So yeah. But after the failure of Spider-Man or Amazing Spider-Man 2, they did Spider-Man Homecoming, rebooting Spider-Man into the MCU, and I'm just giving this an S. I really love this movie. I think it is the best Spider-Man movie since the first Spider-Man. And it's just really fucking good. It is a good first outing for this Peter after he was introduced and put into the MCU from Civil War and everything the year before. And yeah, so basically it's Peter learning more so I'll talk about this for really quickly. The fact that Uncle Ben isn't anywhere to be seen in the home trilogy, as it's called. Ugh. So there are some Easter eggs to show that Uncle Ben was actually, I did actually exist in the MCU prior to these movies. Peter refers to, or almost refers to the accident that just happened, with his Uncle Ben dying in Civil War. That's pretty much the only place that's mentioned, though. He has a suitcase in Far From Home that has, I think, BP, so Ben Parker's initials on them. However, they never mention Uncle Ben, even in No Way Home, when Toby's Peter and when the other two Peters mention Uncle Ben, he reacts not with like any actual like surprise or anything at the mentions of Uncle Ben or even like any feeling towards it. He's just like, huh? Like, it's just really fucking weird. I do not understand why they had such an aversion to like just mentioning Uncle Ben in these movies. And some people say, "Oh, why would they do that? They did it in the previous two movies." Or some people said legitimately while this trilogy was still going on, "Oh, the Ben Parker stuff still happens and he's still important to Spider-Man's backstory. He's just not mentioned in the movies." Motherfuckers, sorry, but No Way Home definitively proved that Ben Parker is not a definitive part of Peter's backstory in these movies. I don't even really give a shit that they didn't show it. They didn't really have to. However, not at least mentioning it after Civil War alluded to it and like talking about it just a little bit, and then maybe referencing or referring to Peter's Uncle Ben at any point in either this movie or the other two is just really fucking weird, considering almost every incarnation of Peter Parker in the comics, in the TV shows, and the movies, and the video games all run under the assumption that Uncle Ben is part of his backstory and his guiding light in terms of his morality and everything, with the with great power comes great responsibility shit. And it's just so fucking weird, you know? They could have easily just mentioned Ben Parker. I don't give a fuck that they didn't show Ben Parker or show him dying or anything, or have Peter marinate on it for too long. But like, uh, plus, it would have helped the themes of this movie. So this movie, in terms of its main story, is Peter is still learning to be a superhero. He is under the tutelage of Tony Stark. However, after Civil War, Tony Stark has not talked to Peter in months, and he's kind of getting a little antsy about it, and he wants to see if Tony Stark needs his help with anything. He just wants to be helpful. Uh, he just wants to, go Spider-Man, and he wants to go on some superhero adventures with Iron Man and everything. However, yeah, no, just not going to happen. Um, However, he then soon uh, starts investigating stuff happening with Vulture. So, yeah, Vulture is in this movie, played brilliantly by Michael Keaton. Like, I'm not gonna lie, Michael Keaton is the best part of this movie. Just like Norman Osborn, I think was the best part about Spider-Man 1, or at least one of the, yeah, definitely the best part. Like, Michael Keaton is the best part of this movie. Adrian Toomes is reinvented in the MCU as this blue collar guy who runs a wrecking crew, I think. And they were initially charged with clearing up the Chitauri shit, um, or at least part of it, before damage control comes in and takes over the entire operation. Um, so that causes him to develop a thing with Tony Stark, because I think Tony Stark was the one to do it, to charge damage control with it. So he hates Tony Stark, but he also is collecting, or started collecting, some of the tech from the Chitauri shit and try to do a mix of, I think, reverse engineering it and like trying to use it, um, or just make it into their own tech. So yeah, so he has that, and he has been making money that way, I believe, and I think that's also how he creates his vulture tech. So yeah, so that is actually really cool. He also has Scorpion and Shocker as part of his uh his his underlings and everything. Unfortunately, we wouldn't get Scorpion again until Brand New Day, where they were clearly setting up him to come back at some point in this trilogy, but they just never did for some reason. Um, but yeah, um, played by the guy, uh, Brian Mando, is that his name? Something Mando, who was in Better Call Saul, who did a really good job there. Does a really good job here with what he has to do, or what he has to work with and everything. And yeah. And Peter's arc through this movie is him learning kind of the with great power comes great responsibility thing, where Tony Stark unfortunately replaces Uncle Ben in these movies, and in Peter's backstory, and basically uh teaches him the lesson that he should have learned from Uncle Ben. This is one of the big things I have with this trilogy, and the fact that people would not shut the fuck up about whether Ben Parker existed in this universe or not. He clearly didn't. Or maybe he did, but he wasn't important to Peter. He was not that important to Peter. I think that's a real disservice to the character, but whatever. Um, so yeah, in the legacy that Ben has in the comics, the TV shows, the other movies, and fandom in general, I just think that that's really disrespectful. But anyways, um, so yeah, so yeah, but in terms of what the movie is trying to do, I actually don't mind it. Peter got his suit from Tony Stark in Civil War because Tony Stark needed Peter to have a capable suit and everything. So Peter hacks the suit with Ned, his friend, who's an adaptation of Genki from the Miles Morales comics. Um, they even have the same name, I believe, Leeds, and or maybe not. Actually, I don't know what last name Genki has off the top of my head, but yeah, and they're also Asian, but two different types of Asian. Where I think Genki is he Chinese? Oh, he might be Korean. I'm trying to think. Anyways, so yeah, where he's whichever one of those he is, and then Ned is, I think he's Polynesian. Uh, wherever Tagalong is spoken, because we see his grandma in uh in No Way Home speak Tagalong. But yeah. Um but yeah, so and Ned to separate this from the previous movies, he doesn't have Harry Osborn, which I don't know why, but whatever. And they just gave him Ned. And Ned Leeds has the same name as a comic book character from a while ago who I think became Hobgoblin. So yeah. And they kind of play with that in No Way Home, and that's fun. But yeah. Um and uh yeah, so he hacks the suit, unlocks the AI that Tony Stark was I think eventually going to give him, um, and goes on an investigation um with the Vulture and everything. But then Tony Stark, because he sees what's going on, he gives Peter a reality check and everything, because Peter thinks that he can handle it all alone, but he's not going at it the right way. Tony Stark has to help him and everything, and Peter even like challenges him on that in one of their meetings, and then Tony Stark steps out of the suit, because before that, Tony Stark was in another country, I think in Southeast Asia, with Pepper and everything, and it was just controlling the suit through the neural uplink he has with his technology and everything. So yeah, and then he takes the suit from Peter, and Peter has to use his homemade suit to solve the problem and everything, and then Tony gives him back the suit and everything because he learns his lesson. He goes on a character arc and everything, and I think that that's all good for what it is. Here's the thing: if Ben Parker had been part of this continuity in the way that he was in the previous movies, I honestly think that it would have enhanced what was in this. Because I'm very shocked that they didn't, like, have Peter, like, look at a photo of him and Ben when he was younger and have a voiceover from an actor. I don't know who they would have gotten, but an actor voicing Ben Parker who would also stand in the photo with him, um, where he would have, like, maybe had the quote of, with great power comes great responsibility or something like that. And Peter would just remember his words and everything and be like, ah, man, I forgot. Or I got too big in over my head with all this shit. I think that that would have enhanced what was going on here, and it would have helped Peter with his lesson learned and everything, you know? And then you can have Peter say that kind of shit to Tony after, like, in one of the last few scenes when they're talking at, I think, Avengers HQ. So yeah, and Tony Stark shows him the the Iron Spider suit and everything, you know. So yeah, the one thing though I will say about this movie, and actually, actually this and Far From Home, unfortunately, and Civil War a bit, Tony Stark kind of turns into an idiot in these movies. So in Civil War, he recruited a 15-year-old and to help him fight against Captain America and his group, and everything. And then in this, he wants to officially make Peter an Avenger for some reason, even though Peter's clearly not ready for it. And even I think even Peter says he's not ready for it. And, like, I don't know how, like, you have Tony Stark, like, regress as a character that badly, because Tony had to go through a fucking character arc in the previous movies he showed up in. Like, the first Iron Man was literally about him growing up and, like, starting to put other people before himself. Iron Man 2 was about him learning to trust others and everything and get over himself in terms of his, like, self-pity and all that shit. And work to make himself better physically, you know, because of the fact that he's dying from the palladium poisoning. Iron Man 3 is about him getting over his PTSD and shit from, and I think maybe jealousy or whatever the fuck, from, like, the stuff that happened in the Avengers with the Chitauri attack, and then what he also saw, I think, in terms of Thanos, and then stuff that happened years prior to any of the movies. Okay? The first Avengers movie, Tony Stark has to learn how to be on a team. He needs to learn to, like, trust others in terms of, like, other superheroes and not be a jackass about it and everything. Okay. Avengers Age of Ultron, not real. He doesn't really go on a character arc. It's just about him, like, fucking up by making an AI that goes rogue. And yeah, in the Captain America Civil War, mainly that's just a movie about two different ideologies clashing, hence the Civil War title. And Tony Stark wanting to protect the Earth by putting suits of armor around the world, as he says in not Infinity War, Endgame. So yeah, with the Sokovia Accords and everything, you know. So him giving Spider-Man this crazy suit and everything is just, with an AI in it that is just shut off and everything, but Peter can still use some of the other things in regards to it. Yeah, I just don't understand why they had Tony Stark be like that. It just makes Tony Stark look like an idiot, and I'll get to that in Far From Home because it's worse there. But yeah, But at the very least, he's trying to mentor Peter into being a better superhero. So it's a give and take there. You have Tony Stark go down a few IQ points, but then he's trying to make Spider-Man a better person and hero. So yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. So yeah, but I still give this an S just for what it does right and everything, and it's on par with the first Spider-Man movie from the Raimi trilogy. Far From Home. Actually, I will give an A. Okay, so my first problem with this movie is the fact that the Peter MJ relationship comes right the fuck out of nowhere. She's in Homecoming, but unfortunately, like they were never shown to they were shown interacting, but they weren't shown to have crushes on each other. This also comes off the heels of Infinity War and Endgame, where everyone was blipped for 5 years and then came back. Don't know why it's everyone in Peter's grade that was in Homecoming that blipped, but okay. And I think what would have worked is if they had a scene where Peter and Ned are talking about the fact that they blipped for 5 years and then Peter was dying on Titan when he got dusted and because he still remembers that and uh he got brought back through the same process, just reversed of when he got dusted and everything in Infinity War. And and if he went through a thing of like being a bit existentially worried at 17, I think is how old he is in this. I think he would have or maybe just 16. Either way. I think that if they had come at it from that angle and then he developed a crush on MJ because maybe he sees something in her and everything, and then also the existentialism of life being too short and everything, I think that would have been really good. And you can have the same for MJ, where she's also coming to terms with that and realizing life's too short and everything. And yeah, the thing about MJ in the first two of the Home trilogy movies is in Homecoming, her character is literally, because they have influence from John Hughes movies, her character is literally Allison Sheedy's character from The Breakfast Club. That is literally just the beginning and ending of her character. Zendaya doesn't, in my opinion, Zendaya doesn't even play it that well. She comes off as very unnatural in the role, and she comes off like a tryhard rather than that kind of character coming naturally to her. So, to me, it just didn't work in Homecoming. In Far From Home, however, they change her personality a bit, and while she's still a goth and she's still kind of a bit of a downer and everything, she is much more of a character because they made her more three-dimensional rather than being two-dimensional. And I feel like that fits a bit more naturally with Zendaya's character, and they made her a bit more realistic. Or at least just more fun to watch and listen to. But yeah, like I said though, the Peter and MJ pairing comes right the fuck out of nowhere. They don't really explain why they like each other, they just do. And that is just one of my biggest complaints about the movie, which could have been solved if they just either had another draft or they had some scenes added to the shooting script where they like just fucking addressed it. They just expected people to go along with it, and it's just like come on. Like, really? I don't understand that at all. But yeah. So the main plot of the movie and why it's called Far From Home is the fact that uh on their on a class trip, everyone in Peter's class is going to Europe. A few different places in Europe for a couple-week trip. They first go to Rome, then I think Germany, and then England, and then back to the United States. Unfortunately, on this trip, Mysterio is a thing, and he at first is being played as someone from an alternate universe. They're playing with the multiverse here a bit, which gets expanded upon in No Way Home, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and the last Ant-Man movie. I think also maybe a couple of the other movies, but yeah, from the MCU from Phase 4 and 5. And then also, right, Fantastic Four. That takes place in an alternate dimension too, or alternate universe. But yeah, but he's not. He's instead a guy who Tony Stark pissed off. Funnily enough, like during his presentation in Civil War, and he vows revenge on Tony Stark. But Tony Stark is dead, so his next best thing is to go after Spider-Man, and he tricks Peter into giving him something that Tony Stark gave Peter, which this is just another thing that, unfortunately, these movies, the first two of these movies, really lower the IQ points of Tony Stark too much. So Tony Stark left Peter the Edith glasses from Infinity War and Endgame, or mainly just Infinity War, and for some reason gave Peter full access to order around the AI, the Edith AI, and full access to pretty much all of the Stark shit, the Stark tech and everything. And this just creates too many things of stupid comedy in these movies that I fucking hate. I hate this kind of comedy, and the fact that it came after Guardians of the Galaxy, like, showed Marvel that people really appreciate a full-on comedy for these movies as opposed to a more serious movie with comedic elements and comedic scenes. We have to incorporate stupid fucking shit-ass comedy into these movies and just have things that don't make any fucking sense, things that are illogical to happen just because they're funny, and just... oh my fucking god. Not only that, this movie makes Peter Parker a fucking idiot. Like, genuinely. So I get that his thing in this movie is he has self-doubt and doesn't want to become the next Iron Man. He just wants to be his own person and everything. And that's fine. I have no problems with that. That's a fine character arc for him to go on. But the thing about it, with how they go about it is the fact that, like, Peter is just, I'm trying to think. Okay. He is so much in doubt that because Mysterio has, like, helped him defeat some monsters previously, and S.H.I.E.L.D. trusts him and everything, which, by the way, is fucking stupid, for Peter's reasoning, and everything, Peter just gives Mysterio full access to the Edith glasses and the AI therein. And thus, Mysterio, because he tricked Peter into doing that, then takes revenge on Tony Stark and S.H.I.E.L.D., I think it's supposed to be that, in London, by using a mix of his projectors and everything that he does to do his illusions and shit like that, by using the Stark tech to, like, get revenge. And whew, okay, so Far From Home was given a lot of praise when it came out back in 2019. I cannot fathom fucking why. Like, okay, so I understand it. The Mysterio stuff in this, when he's actually Mysterio, is pretty cool. The fight scenes are pretty cool. Some of the ideas are really good. But I really do not understand how people, like, I think it was mainly the hype and the fact that people couldn't readily rewatch this movie unless if you went back to the movie theater. But, like, upon subsequent rewatches of this movie, you realize the problems that it has. And, like, oh man, the fact that they make Peter look so fucking stupid, and yes, I get it's part of his character arc, but I feel like Peter would act more, like, I don't know, logical maybe in this way? I don't fucking know. Like, I get people make logical decisions sometimes when they're in a funk, but, like, this is just too fucking much. This is where they, like, lowered Peter's IQ points in addition to Tony Stark's. And it's so fucking, like, what? Yeah. So, yeah, and, in order for Peter to go through his character arc in this movie, he loses the Stark suit because, he leaves it with S.H.I.E.L.D. Then, because he has to disguise himself while he's in Italy, so that none of his classmates try and put two and two together, that with Spider-Man being in Italy and Peter being in Italy, that they could be connected. Because MJ is already kind of figuring it out. Like, he then with Happy Hogan's help and everything on the Stark Jet, and with a fabricator on the Stark Jet, makes his own suit, which is a very nice looking suit. I gotta mention actually the suits. So I like the suit. I really love the Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man suit. I really do. The first Amazing Spider-Man suit is meh, and then the Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit, goated as hell. I really actually like the Stark suit from Homecoming. It was also in Civil War and Infinity War and the beginning of this movie. I really do like it. I like the version in Civil War better because the blue was a lot darker, thus you couldn't see the tech lines that are on it. But it's still a good-ass interpretation of the classic Spider-Man suit. This Spider-Man suit is a mix of a influenced by Miles Morales, because you have the red fingered gloves and everything, as well as the red and black. But the red and black color scheme is also a reference to the earliest Spider-Man comics drawn by Steve Ditko, in which he colored Spider-Man's suit red and black instead of red and blue. I think with some blue highlights, though, on the black, because that's how comics roll sometimes, especially back in the day. For, like, highlight colors and everything. And he makes that suit with the fabricator and everything. It is a bit of a downgrade from his previous suit. He never gets that suit back, which I don't know why. Like, it seems like S.H.I.E.L.D. should like ship it to him, at least to me, you know. But yeah, and then he goes to defeat Mysterio. Another thing with this is the inconsistency between the movies produced by Disney and the movies produced by Sony. So in Civil War, the scenes that we get with Spider-Man fighting the other Avengers and everything is just some of the best Spider-Man shit, and also before that when Tony recruits him, is some of the best Spider-Man shit you will ever see in one of these movies. It is just so damn good. The dialogue is perfect. Tom Holland's acting is great. And how they show off his powers is just fucking goated. They took influence from the Raimi and Mark Webb movies, and they just put it into a fight scene against other Avengers, which we hadn't seen before. That is really awesome with how they executed that, and it's really cool. Where the fuck was I going with this? And yeah, but we get two things in Civil War that are never followed up upon until here. So, Peter in Civil War refers to Uncle Ben. I already addressed that. And in that, he also has his spider sense being an innate part of his abilities. You know, just like with the Sam Raimi and Mark Webb movies. So, in Homecoming, I remember reading John Watts specifically did not want Peter to have his spider sense in that movie, so they just wrote the script without Spider-Man having that ability, which he really should have had in that movie. Another problem with it, not too bad in my opinion, because it doesn't really affect my enjoyment of the movie, but I remember reading that. Far From Home tries to re-rail that because people complained that it didn't make any sense for Peter to not have his spider sense by having it in the movie and Peter developing it. And for some reason, Aunt May calls it as Peter Tingle, which I fucking... That's another bit of MCU humor that I fucking hate, is just the really stupid names that they give some of these things, some of these abilities and shit. What the fuck? So Peter finally like hones in on his spider sense. I'm just gonna call it spider sense because that's just the better name for it, and the name it is everywhere else in Spider-Man. Um, and he uses it to defeat Mysterio, which is actually really cool. And I do like that fight scene and everything, and I do like how that ends. So yeah, so then because of how stupid Mysterio is, he accidentally, I believe, kills himself trying to kill Spider-Man. But then he recorded a video before that and leaked it to the Daily Bugle and leaked out that or that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. And also shows it to, like, manipulates footage and audio to have Peter seem to be the one ordering, the drones and everything from the Stark Tech. So yeah. And then we have it end on, like, the what the fuck jokes that happened in Homecoming, that happened here. So, yeah. This movie, unfortunately, has a lot of good things. I will say this, a lot of good things. I love the fact that we actually get out of New York for this. And I know certain people don't like the fact that in some of these movies, mainly with like Infinity or Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame in this movie, Peter is not in New York City. I personally think though it is a breath of fresh air because we got 5 movies before Civil War where Peter is just in New York City. I think we were due for different locations and everything. And then Homecoming, we were entirely in New York City for Homecoming, outside of like a few different flashbacks where Peter's in Germany. You know, but like we were entirely in New York for Homecoming, and this was before Infinity War, Endgame in this movie. You know, and some of the scenes at the beginning and ending of this movie are in New York City, so I don't really have a problem with this, and I don't know why people. I don't have a problem with that. I don't know why some people do. Like, it's temporary. It is not the entire thing with this version of Spider-Man. Get the fuck over it. Anyways, so yeah, that's just a stupid, like, that's, in my opinion, that's just a very stupid, like, what is the word? Complaint. But yeah. But yeah, overall, some things about this movie don't make any fucking sense. They lower the IQ points of Tony Stark and Peter too much. The MJ relationship comes right the fuck out of nowhere, and they don't explain why they're attracted to each other. And in a way that at least makes any sense. And, because it literally comes out of nowhere. It was never established in Homecoming, because Peter had a crush on a different girl, I forget, but it's Vulture's daughter, I forget her name, but, like, yeah, and then he asked her out to Homecoming, but unfortunately doesn't get to go there with her, because he has to deal with her dad. And yeah, but yeah, I think Mysterio, his powers are cool, but he as a villain is kind of stupid. Unfortunately, the first 2 of these movies as well, have to deal. Peter has to deal with Tony Stark's like scraps, kind of, or just the after effects of Tony Stark's bullshit. And yeah, that is kind of a complaint that I can see, and I do think is a little bit valid with these movies. I don't think it's that bad, honestly, because we got a great villain out of Vulture in this movie, and I think him being influenced by Tony Stark, but Tony Stark and everything not being his full motivation for what he's doing, because he eventually just grows a liking to what he's doing and just does it for the love of the game. But Mysterio here is fully influenced by Tony Stark, and he is just a crazy dipshit. But yeah. Granted, you understand his reasoning, but he's still a crazy dipshit. But yeah. I will say, though, it's a bit better than how, Eddie Brock was in Spider-Man 3, and I think it's Harry was in Amazing Spider-Man 2. But, yeah. Where he's not acting illogical, he's just not my favorite villain in any of these movies. So, yeah, just an A. Into the Spider-Verse. S tier. Fucking goated. Best Spider-Man movie to date, I think, at the very least. Up until this point. This movie is great. It introduced Miles Morales to a whole lot of people. Granted, Miles Morales had previously been in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, but this is, and he was introduced in the 2018 Insomniac game. But he got his own movie here, and they did very well with it. I love the introduction with Peter Parker when they're talking about his backstory in an opening montage and everything. With a, I do like that they shit on Spider-Man 3 with the emo Peter dancing sequence and everything. And having him played by Chris Pine is actually pretty cool because they already have all the other Chris's in Hollywood at this moment, who are major movie stars in these movies. So why the fuck not? Playing Peter and everything from Miles's universe. And you have the backstory where Miles becomes Spider-Man after Peter dies. He also gets bitten by a radioactive spider and being random. We don't even know where the... Well, not in this movie. In the sequel, they explain it. But yeah, not in this movie do we know where the spider comes from. But it's not like in this it necessarily matters. But we get introductions to several different spider people from the multiverse. We get an alternate version of Peter, who is, I think, 10 to 20 years older than the Peter of his universe, has black or brown hair instead of blonde, and is voiced by a different guy, but is basically mostly the same, just fast forwarded about 20 years. And then we get Spider-Man Noir, which is a Spider-Man from the 1930s from that comic, played by Nicolas Cage, which is a great fucking casting choice. He, I think before this, played Superman in Teen Titans Go, that movie, and then, or Teen Titans Go to the movies, and then, because that was a casting gag because he was supposed to play Superman in the 90s, and then they CGI'd him for fucking The Flash, but anyways. And then, he got to play Spider-Man here when he was, I think, in the running to play Spider-Man back in the 90s as well. But yeah, I think he does a great job here. Nicolas Cage playing a Spider-Man, that is inspired casting. We get Penny Parker, we get Spider-Ham. I'm trying to remember, is there anyone else? I think that's actually it. For the Spider people. But yeah, and they get brought here when an experiment from Wilson Fisk goes awry, and he's trying to find an alternate universe where his wife and son are still alive, and he can bring them to his universe because his versions of them died, and he wants to get them back. So, yeah, because he regrets what he did that I believe led to their deaths. But, yeah. But, unfortunately, that is destabilizing the multiverse, and they have to stop the machine before it rips apart the fabric of reality, and they also need to go home to their own universes. So, yeah. Meanwhile, the ones from the alternate universes are slowly, like, glitching until they eventually die, in a few days. And so they also are on a timetable for that. So, yeah. Miles develops his powers after the Peter of his universe dies, and he goes through a character arc where he grows confidence and everything and learns to be a hero. He goes on the hero's journey, and that is very Spider-Man and everything. He, one thing I like is that this film, I think, was the first... No, not the first, actually. That was I think, the Insomniac game. But it was one of the first things to have Aunt May know Peter's identity. Actually, no. Homecoming would do that before the Insomniac game. But, like, this was in that, like, trilogy of stories where they establish that, Aunt May knows, because that's just a different angle to take Aunt May on, and she is really cool in this movie. She is Peter's guy in the chair, as Ned would refer to himself as in No Way Home. And she mans his spider cave, I'll call it, because it's basically the Bat Cave, just for Spider-Man. And Miles takes a classic Spider-Man suit from the Spider Cave, spray paints it black and red, and just uses it in the final battle. And that is badass and everything. The What's Up Danger scene in this movie is so fucking good, which I will also say, the music of this movie. I'm not too big into hip-hop or rap music, but I love how they do the licensed music in this movie. That takes a lot of, like, hip-hop and rap and R&B and just infuses it into Miles' identity. The Insomniac games would take influence from this and use it for their own version of Miles in his game and Spider-Man 2. But this is the originator of it, and I think also the comics might have also taken influence from that, and that just makes too much sense to make a good movie with a really good personality to it. This movie is fucking great. The only thing though, I saw this in, I don't think it was an IMAX theater, but like a good size like theater screen and everything when it came out back in, it was actually after 2018. So like 2019 when I went to Florida with my mom in the outside of Universal Studios, the Universal Walkway, I think it is, and where there's a movie theater, you can go watch whatever movies are playing there. And like I watched this with my mom on that screen, and the animation style does not lend well to a big screen. It very much is trying to be a comic book in motion, and that's fine. However, the way that they did it is they tried to mimic how older comic books would do dots for like the color shit and everything on the pages. That hurt the fuck out of my eyes. Some people don't have that problem and that's fine, but the movie constantly on a big ass theater screen looked like it was like it looked like I needed to be wearing 3D glasses because it was constantly like having these shifting colors and everything that looked like an old comic book. There's a reason why old comic books weren't in motion, not only because like limitations of like the technology and paper and all that shit, but also when you see this kind of stuff in motion, it can really hurt your eyes if it's like blown up big enough. So that is a point against these movies, in my opinion, just in terms of the animation style. But the animation style, other than that, is just so damn good. It's a very, very good use of the CGI and everything that they use to animate these movies. And, like, it gives the movie its own particular look. There's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that used a very similar, like, art style as well as similar writing. And there's a good reason why. Like, it looks good and on a smaller screen, I would say. Um, and it's it's just very striking in terms of its visual presentation. So, yeah. But like I just love the writing. I love like the acting in this movie. I love like the little winks and not. The only thing that's confusing is the fact that like apparently Spider-Man comics exist in this Spider-Man universe. Why? That's just the confusing thing that they do in these movies, and that doesn't make any fucking sense for them to do. Like, I don't understand it at all. Like, until Peter is dead, he still has his secret identity in this movie. Yet there are comic books displaying his fucking origin. Not that long after he dies. Like, this movie, I think, takes place over, like, a few days span, and it's like, that is way too fucking quick after Peter dies for there to be comic books. So they already exist, and they're the comic books from our universe as shown on the page. Like, I know you're not necessarily supposed to take these things that, like, seriously, but that just makes no fucking sense. But, yeah, you're not supposed to think about it too much, but it's just really confusing. But it's still a really good-ass movie, and I would recommend you see it, even if you don't like Spider-Man. That is what I do. That's what I'd recommend. Spider-Man No Way Home. I'm putting it in S. Here's the thing. I think the backlash to this movie that came after, I think it hit the home release and people could rewatch it at home, unfortunately divorced from when people were watching this in the theater and it was new and exciting and everything. I think, unfortunately, for some people, it lowered in terms of people's liking of the movie. And unfortunately, a lot of people then developed their own, like, or they went with the opinion that the first half of the movie is boring or just not that good. The second half of the movie is what people came for. The thing about this, though, is it rounds out the home trilogy and does some really good things with the characters that were missing from the previous two movies, even Homecoming. And on top of that, it has a more well-rounded representation of Peter. On top of that, it gets rid of the Aunt May's hot jokes from the previous two movies and actually gives her a fucking character. which granted she did have in Homecoming, and she wasn't in Far From Home like much outside of like I think the beginning scene, but and it started here in Homecoming, and it was also I think in Civil War and Endgame, I think, just a bit when she shows up with Peter at Tony Stark's funeral. But like in terms of this, it actually gives her a character. It makes her very similar to other Aunt Mays in other continuities, and it just makes her like a better character. But unfortunately, she dies in this movie. So yeah. So the first half of this movie has to deal with the fallout of what happened at the end of Far From Home. It kind of reminds me of a Kamen Rider episode from like 20 years ago, where they leave off, where in a lot of episodes they'll leave off on a cliffhanger that leads into the next episode, and then they quickly deal with what they left off on because for some reason they don't want it to go on too long. But yeah, so that's what happens with No Way Home, and they deal with Peter's secret identity being revealed very quickly in the first couple scenes of the movie. Then they have Damage Control come in, and have Matt Murdock come in and be Peter's lawyer for this, which is really cool. That they got Matt Murdock in because it makes sense, and it's also Matt Murdock's reintroduction into the MCU after the Defenders shows were kind of in this continuity limbo of maybe being in the MCU, maybe not. We don't know. Until Disney got the full rights back, like the rights reverted to them from from Netflix, and they were able to put those shows on Disney Plus and reincorporate everything into the MCU proper or properly and everything. And they eventually rebooted Daredevil into a new TV show, Daredevil Born Again and everything, and they have Kingpin, and I think Jessica Jones is also going to show up, maybe. I think the other Defenders are too, and then also they have the Punisher. They gave him another TV show, and then he shows up in Brand New Day, which I'll talk about in a bit. So yeah. So that's actually really cool that they start playing with the MCU elements more in a fun way versus like I think informing like the plots of these movies. They start playing with them. They play in the sandbox. They don't like just have it inform their plot. So yeah, so we have that. Then we have Peter dealing with the fallout or the start of the fallout of him being Spider-Man when MJ and Ned don't get accepted into Boston University, I think. MIT. Sorry. Not Boston University, MIT. And then he goes to clear his case with the recruiter woman, and unfortunately, because of the fact that he wanted Doctor Strange to wipe everyone on Earth's memories of him being Spider-Man and him like screwing up the spell and it backfiring and working in a way that doesn't make a ton of sense when you actually think about it. It starts bringing all of the or most of the movie villains from the Sam Raimi trilogy and the Mark Webb duology to the MCU. Now, I'll quickly talk about this because it is a point of contention, and I do think there is merit to this criticism. So, Doctor Strange in his movies, basically, and Infinity War and Endgame, is established as taking his job very seriously as a sorcerer, and then they do address that I don't think he was actually Sorcerer Supreme, or maybe he became it very quick or for a very short amount of time, but then Wong became the de facto Sorcerer Supreme because Doctor Strange blipped for 5 years, as he says in the movie. And which I do like that they quickly address that and just move on from it. Just so everyone's caught up on everything, because I think a lot of people were under the assumption that Doctor Strange was the Sorcerer Supreme, which Peter was as well, so it's fine. But the fact that Doctor Strange he doesn't ask Peter if he wants to try and do a spell that he knows of to wipe people's memories and everything. He just tells Peter about the spell, and then they go down to his, like, I guess basement area, whatever the fuck, and starts casting the spell to wipe everybody's memories of Peter Parker and Spider-Man being the same person. And then Peter tells him he doesn't want his Aunt May, MJ, and Ned to be, or to have their memories wiped and everything. Somehow it screws up the spell because Strange has to alter it mid-cast rather than just, actually just talk to Peter about it beforehand to get all the details straight. Or just quit the spell mid-cast. When Peter starts, like, telling him about it, it's just, like, telling him about these details, it is just so stupid. Like, they play it for dumb MCU comedy, but, like, it is a big fucking problem, and it's inconsistent with Doctor Strange's, like, characterization from his movies and, the Avengers movies he was just in, including Multiverse of Madness, which technically was made to be before this, and also directed by Sam Raimi, funnily enough. But then would come out after this. There would be some reshoots to cover that continuity and everything, to have references to this movie. But yeah. But that causes the spell to go awry, and unfortunately, even though Strange contains the spell, it's now bringing people or villains from other universes to this one, the ones that knew Peter was Spider-Man. So, yeah. The only weird thing, though, is Electro, and I'll get to that in a bit. So the first villain Peter fights when he goes to talk to the recruiter woman from MIT is Doc Ock, as you can tell from this poster, where he's from towards the end of Spider-Man 2 when he's still under the control of the tentacles, right before he dies. And I guess before he gets the talking to from his Peter and everything. So for some reason, he thinks that MCU Peter, even though he's in the Iron Spider suit, is his Peter, which is fucking stupid, but okay. And on top of that, like, the MCU Peter has a different voice and different build from his Peter. I don't understand that at all. But granted, I think you're supposed to just assume that because it's Doc Ock from Spider-Man 2 when he was still crazy and possessed by the tentacles, he just doesn't notice these things and doesn't care. Which is whatever. It's an explanation, but yeah. It's just kind of dumb. So yeah. But then after he absorbs some of Peter's nanotech, Peter's suit sinks to the tentacles and everything, and he stops them. So then, which I think is actually really cool and a really good solution to that problem. I think that that's really inventive and cool. That makes sense to me. So yeah. But then who comes out of nowhere but the Green Goblin? For some reason, Doc Ock recognizes him. I'll get to that in a little while when I'm talking about the villains in full. So yeah, but Strange teleports them to the room that he and Peter were in a bit before that, and tells him about what's happening with all the villains that are coming through from the alternate universes, and Peter has to track them all down. And he was just dealing with Lizard, who he traps in one of the cells in that room. So yeah, so he tasks Peter with transporting all of the villains to that room with a magical device that he gives him, made of a mix of the magic and the nanotech, I believe. And then he Peter brings in Ned and MJ to help him track down any sightings of anything, and Peter goes to a power plant to where he starts fighting Electro, who in this movie is reconstituted into an actual body. After Peter fights him and everything and grounds him, he is, reconstituted into a new body where he's more attractive and everything. Is just Jamie Foxx playing Jamie Foxx and everything. He doesn't have the same personality as he did in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Some people bring that up as a bad thing. I don't give a fuck. Like, I will just straight up say that. I don't give a fuck. The character that he was in Amazing Spider-Man 2 was a fucking creep and a douchebag. Who the fuck actually gives a shit? I genuinely ask, who the fuck actually gives a shit that that version of the character did not show up here and he's just more of a regular guy? Who gives a shit? Like, I cannot say that enough. Who gives a shit? Amazing Spider-Man 2 is not a good movie. Fuck you. Anyways, so, yeah, so basically, yeah, Peter, with the help of Sandman, who also shows up because he was transported to the MCU, stops Sandman, or stop Electro. Peter transports Electro with the device after they put him into a firefighter's uniform, I believe. And or maybe, no, not a firefighter's uniform. Whatever the uniform is for the people working at that power plant. And Sandman thinks that Peter did, or he might have killed him, so he tries to fight Peter, but then Peter transports him to Strange's basement, and then yeah. So then after he fixes that shit, after he fixes the power plant shit, he, I believe, regroups with Strange, and he finds out that Strange wants to use the contained spell, reverse it, and send everyone back to their own dimensions. After he finds out that every one of them died fighting their version of Spider-Man. This is also after Peter, Norman Osborn, he gets himself temporarily free of the Goblin's influence on him. And like I said, this is the movie to fully confirm that it was a split personality thing, which wasn't really denied in the first movie. I'm just saying that. And was actually kind of like confirmed in 3, if you actually think about it, with Harry going crazy. But anyways, so yeah, Norman goes to Feast, where Aunt May's working, which is a thing that they incorporated from the Insomniac games, and which is a homeless shelter. She calls Peter. He gets Norman back to Strange's place. Strange puts Norman in the cell, or one of the cells, and then Strange reveals he's going to send them all back to where they're from, so they can just live out their lives as they were supposed to. Osborn is from some point before the climax of the first Sam Raimi movie, after he finds out that Peter is Spider-Man. Lizard is from after he fully mutates and finds out that Peter is Spider-Man. Electro never actually knew that Peter was Spider-Man, unless he actually heard Gwen Stacy call Spider-Man Peter, but like there's no actual like showing that he even heard her, so that's a bit up in the air. And Sandman, he's from some point, I think, after Spider-Man 3, so he doesn't die fighting Spider-Man. He actually just goes off and just fucks off and like does his thing, I guess. There's because we didn't get a Spider-Man 4, there's no like confirmation as to what the fuck he was doing, but he's from some point after Spider-Man 3. So yeah, so addressing the things with the villains. There's only a few things. So Electro knowing Peter was Spider-Man. Even in this movie, they have dialogue where he did not know that his Spider-Man his name was Peter Parker, or even what he looked like. They have confirmation of that later on when he's talking to Andrew Garfield's Peter. Andrew's Peter shows his face to him, and he makes a joke about him not being black. So yeah, so that's a bit of a weirdness. I just think it's mainly that like he died fighting Spider-Man, I think, is the connection there. It's still weird. It still doesn't go along with the explanation Strange gives, but whatever. Then we have Doc Ock knowing who Norman Osborn, or knowing that Norman Osborn was Green Goblin. So there is dialogue in this movie that people take too fucking seriously, or too literally, or just in a direction that the writers clearly did not intend. So, we have, when they're all in Strange's, like, sorcerer room, talking and everything about the last things that they remember, or the things that they remember from before they died in their universes. Octavius somehow knows that Norman Osborn is the Green Goblin. No idea really why. And some people take that as, so Sandman talks about how it was all over the news after Green Goblin died and got impaled by his own glider. Some people take that, for some reason I can't fucking fathom, to mean that in the Sam Raimi movies, everyone in the world knew after that, or after Norman died, that he was Green Goblin. This is not what they meant whatsoever. I'm sorry. This is just like when people confuse the fact that, like, the fact that the people thought that the Infinity Stones being taken from the alternate timelines created the alternate timelines in Endgame, versus, like, what the movie was actually getting at, which is that time travel at all creates alternate timelines if you interact with shit at least a little bit. Okay? Literally, rewatch Endgame if you have, and rewatch those scenes where Bruce tries to explain time travel to the other Avengers. That's literally what he fucking says. In order for, like, the paradoxes of changing the past not to affect the timeline that the Avengers come from, the universe thus creates alternate timelines so that, like, reality doesn't shit the bed. That's basically what he says. It's just that, unfortunately, there's no, like, visual representation, and it's the dialogue is confusing if you don't pay specific attention to it and think about it for a second. Okay? Now, in this, there's similar dialogue that I just said. They did not mean to retcon the Raimi trilogy like that. I can tell you that right now, just even without talking to the writers of No Way Home. They did not mean that. They did not mean that everyone in the fucking world knew that Norman Osborn was the Green Goblin. That is fucking stupid. If you actually think that, you are an idiot. Okay? So, and you need better media analysis skills. So, basically, what they meant is that at some point after the fight with Green Goblin where he died, and then after Peter dropped him off in his and Harry's apartment or penthouse or whatever the fuck, Spider-Man must have told the news, one of the news stations, about how Green Goblin died. And thus everyone knew how the Green Goblin died, but no one knew how Norman Osborn died. Oh yeah, another thing, right, against Spider-Man 3 is the fact that, like, in the theatrical cut, because it's not in the editor's cut, because it was a thing added in reshoots. They have Harry's butler tell him that Norman died by his own blade, rather than Harry finding it out for himself, or just trusting Peter. That is fucking stupid. The editor's cut takes that out, and it's all the better for it. But anyways, because it makes the decision for Harry to go help Peter his own, and an actually good decision. So yeah. But yeah. However, where it gets confusing is why Otto Octavius knows Norman was the Green Goblin. There's no official explanation, I think, by either the writers or in the movie itself, either of the cuts. I'm going to talk about the alternate cut in a bit. Like, why Octavius knows that. My assumption is, therefore, that something in regards to the multiverse travel, and the fact that this is clearly, like, copying them from their original timelines as opposed to just straight up scooping them out and bringing them to the MCU. It must have fucked with their brains a little bit, or at least a few of their brains a little bit, and thus Octavius just gained the knowledge through that. If you look at Octavius's clothes, his clothes were changed when he was brought to the MCU as well. So, yeah. Just saying. So something clearly happened when Octavius was brought to the MCU. Okay? I'm just saying that. That's the only workaround I can really think of, and that's the only real workaround that makes any sense. Clearly, if you want a realistic explanation, clearly the writers did not think that through, and neither did the people on set while they were filming these scenes. You know, because otherwise I think they would have shot something else that made more sense. So, yeah. But they did not mean to retcon the Raimi trilogy like that. And if you think that they did, you're an idiot. So anyways, and you just need to think about these things for more than 2 seconds. Okay? So anyways, yeah, so Peter attempts to stop Strange from sending them back to their own universes. He traps Strange in the mirror dimension by using geometry, which is actually pretty cool. And then he vows to everyone to cure them of what's going on with them and send them back to their universes. Yeah. So they can all go back to being normal and live happy lives in their original universes. Because he doesn't want them to die because they're all just victims of circumstance. And that is basically all of those villains. They are victims of circumstance to some degree or another. You know, and that is where the heart of this movie is the fact that this Peter wants to do right even by his villains from an alternate universe he has never met and doesn't know, and yeah. But he wants to do right by them. So, yeah. And in my opinion, that's just really awesome. I fucking appreciate that. I appreciate the hell out of that, you know? So he brings them to the penthouse, or not the penthouse, the apartment that Happy set up for Peter and his Aunt May so they could lie low after Peter's identity was revealed as Spider-Man, and uses some of the Stark tech that's in there to fabricate certain things. First, he cures Octavius of his, he makes a new chip to, alter how the arms on Octavius's back work, because he figures out that they're how he is, or they're why he's crazy. And, yeah, so he figures it out, puts a new microchip on the tentacles, and has it work so that they're not controlling his mind, but he is controlling them instead. So yeah. And then he frees Octavius from that and has the arms put the nanotech back on his suit. And then what was it? After that, or actually slightly before that, he puts a thing on Electro that is going to drain him of all the electricity powers he got, so he's just a normal guy again. And initially, Electro is fine with that, but then, yeah. But then, when Octavius starts talking to Norman about going back to normal and being freed of the goblin shit, the goblin rears his ugly head. Yeah. And he talks about how the powers that they're bestowed aren't curses, but gifts. I'm really surprised that the end credits of this movie doesn't use Gifts and Curses by Yellowcard from the Spider-Man 2 soundtrack, and I'm surprised that, like, that's not on streaming, because it really should be. It's a really good song. I recommend listening to it. But yeah, and I will tell you this with absolute full chest certainty. Willem Dafoe kills it in this movie as Green Goblin. He is having the time of his life reprising this role, and it is phenomenal. It is the same performance as he had as the Green Goblin and Norman to a degree in the first Spider-Man movie. He does not miss a beat in the 20 years since he shot the first Spider-Man movie. Like, I don't know how you actually unironically say that Norman or that Willem Dafoe was phoning it in here. Fuck that shit in the ass. Like, holy goddamn shit. Like, how do you... Oh my god, that is so fucking stupid. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, he is the main villain of this movie, and it's so fucking great. Um, and one of the things he wanted when they were talking to him about coming back was for him to have a big role in the movie. And, like, I am so glad that they gave it to him. It is just so good. He convinces most of the other villains that they shouldn't be giving up their powers and everything, and they all just let loose onto the city. But then when Green Goblin gets his glider back, he launches a pumpkin bomb. Well, he fights Spider-Man first, which I love this. The 20 years between when the first Spider-Man movie came out and when this came out, or almost 20 years, but you get my point. Like allow, and also the normalization of certain comic book tropes like healing factors and all that shit, and more like durable characters, has very much allowed for more bombastic fights that are more comic booky and cartoony, but they're more in spirit with the comics and everything. And they just, oh, they hit. They're very tokusatsu like, where Peter is just fighting Green Goblin for a good few minutes. But unfortunately, Green Goblin launches a pumpkin bomb, and Aunt May is there. She gets hit by it. She kind of gets a second wind for a second, but then she drops to the ground, and she slowly dies. But she gives Peter the great power comes great responsibility speech, and yeah, she dies. And Peter has to run because the police are there. And yeah, he does get shot in his shoulder, but healing factor, so yeah. He goes to a rooftop where he sees a broadcast by J. Jonah Jameson, because J. Jonah Jameson was retooled as an Alex Jones wannabe in these movies, which is fine. I don't mind it. Which was first done in the first Insomniac game, and then incorporated here. Actually incorporated at the end of Far From Home, then furthered here. And he feels horrible about what just happened because he was responsible for May's death. Yeah. So then, with Ned and MJ, Ned puts on the sling ring from Doctor Strange because Peter got it off of him when he trapped him in the mirror dimension. And he has a bit of magic powers in him, like Strange. And then they try to open up a portal to find their Peter. But who do they bring instead? Andrew Garfield's Peter first, and then Tobey Maguire's Peter. Why are they here? So, because of the shenanigans that happened with Doctor Strange's spell, they were also brought to the MCU at the same time that the villains were. As Tobey Maguire's Peter establishes. He's been there for a day or two. So, yeah. They go with Ned and MJ to find their Peter, who is sulking on the rooftop and everything, and they give him a speech and a pep talk to go, and avenge May and deal with the villains. And they bring up how their Uncle Ben's died, and Andrew's Peter's Gwen died. I do love the stuff that they give Andrew Garfield, because Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire had story input on what they wanted for their Peters and what happened since their last movies. Andrew said that basically he wanted what we got in this, which is that his Peter kept going as the Amazing Spider-Man, but unfortunately he stopped pulling his punches and he just went on a more darker path. He is a more darker Spider-Man now. And Tobey's Peter, basically he's just continuing on, and like I said when I was talking about Spider-Man 3, he and MJ eventually got back together and they worked things out, and they're all good now, which is good for him. Good for them. They weren't really left in a horrible state like Andrew's Peter was, but yeah. I really wish that they had established maybe that like they fought some more villains, they met some more heroes or whatever, but whatever. So they work out cures for all the villains. Or the remaining villains. Andrew's Peter works out or recreates the chemical thing that cured the lizard in his first movie. Toby's Peter works out the chemical that can cure the Green Goblin or cure Norman of the Green Goblin, because what MCU Peter made wasn't effective, unfortunately. And MCU Peter works on the thing for, I think, Electro. So yeah. So then after that, when they're all done, they go to the Statue of Liberty, which is being remodeled. It's been restored to its original bronze color, and it's having a Captain America shield added to it in tribute to him. And MCU Peter puts out a broadcast to the Daily Bugle, and basically as a thing to attract all the villains to the Statue of Liberty. The villains get there, and they all start fighting and kicking ass. And they slowly start curing all the villains. First, Lizard, which Andrew Garfield's Peter does. Then Electro, which actually Octavius shows up. He's still cured and everything, which shows that the MCU Peter's a bit smarter in some ways than Tobey Maguire's Peter, because he was able to build the chip that helped out Octavius, and it survived the electricity, which did not happen in Spider-Man 2. And Octavius puts the electricity thing on Electro, and it works. Then Sandman, he gets cured as well by Tobey Maguire's Peter. And yeah. Then Green Goblin comes in. He and MCU Peter start fighting. But then rather than killing Green Goblin, they throw him the formula that is used to cure him, and MCU Peter uses it to cure him. So, yeah. Then Strange comes in, and Peter tells him to use a spell to make everyone forget who Peter Parker is, to send everyone back to their universes, because Green Goblin, with I think one of his pumpkin bombs, explodes the thing containing the original spell, and it starts having the universes shit the bed and collapse in on each other and start to combine shit. Where a bunch of villains from alternate universes are going to cross over if they don't do something quick. So yeah, Strange casts the spell. Everyone forgets, and Peter lets his friends go on to MIT while he soldiers on and be's the Spider-Man. And my God, goddamn, I love this movie so much. There's a few things that doesn't make sense about it. I don't give a fuck. This movie is fun. This movie is I think, probably not the best of the Homecoming trilogy, or the Home trilogy. I think that Homecoming is definitely better in a bunch of ways. But, like, this movie, I can't think of a lot to, like, really have problems with it for, you know? You can have problems with some of the comedy. You can have problems with some of the illogic in certain places. I completely get it. I don't care. I enjoy the fuck out of this movie. I've rewatched it a lot. I rewatched this and Endgame a lot. And it's just such a damn good movie. Like, it rounds out this trilogy, and it sets Spider-Man on a new course, which is explored a brand new day. But goddamn, do I really enjoy this movie. Now, which is the better movie, the theatrical cut or the more fun stuff version? Yeah. So when the theatrical cut of this movie was released on Blu-ray in 2021, there were originally deleted scenes that were supposed to be on the Blu-ray. However, they were removed shortly before the Blu-ray was released. Sony reincorporated them into an alternate cut of this movie called the More Fun Stuff version. I honestly think the more fun stuff version is better. It's the only recut I can... Actually, no. The editor's cut of Spider-Man 3 is genuinely better than the theatrical in a lot of places. But it is definitely better than Spider-Man 2.1. I would say it's the better version of this film because it doesn't have Spider-Man getting the green paint splotched on him as a dumb fucking joke. It has the scene of Spider-Man apprehending a guy who robbed a store, played by Tom Holland's brother. It has more scenes of Daredevil helping Happy Hogan out with damage control, I believe, which is a nice bit of like fan service in that like low-key fan service because Jon Favreau played Happy Hogan in the Fox Daredevil movie. And we have the new MCU Daredevil with the old... or not Happy Hogan. Whatever the fuck the character's called. Daredevil's like assistant at their office, their law firm. And that's just really nice. I like that. There's a bit of extensions on some of the jokey scenes in the movie. But I don't think any of the footage reincorporated into the movie that also replaces some other bits is to this film's detriment. If anything, I think they are the better versions of some of these scenes and the better extensions of some of these scenes because I feel like the tone isn't complete whiplash at points. The stupid MCU humor is fucking toned down, and I appreciate the movie more with this footage reincorporated as opposed to the footage that they went with in the theatrical cut. So I would say watch the More Fun Stuff version if you have to pick between the two. That's my preferred version. So, yeah. And it actually has a few jokes in it that aren't in the theatrical version that I actually like. So, yeah. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I'm also putting this in S. So, production problems aside, because of the fact that they overworked the animators, and also for some reason when this movie was in theaters, it had like updates. They kept fucking patching the movie like it was a video game for some reason. And the only way we really know about it is from fucking cam rips versus like the officially released version on Blu-ray and digital. But this movie is a great continuation of Into the Spider-Verse. However, it retcons the ending of Into the Spider-Verse a bit by changing the context around the ending scene of Spider-Gwen contacting Miles. But yeah, oh yeah, Spider-Gwen, I forgot. She was the other Spider-Person that I was thinking of when I was talking about Into the Spider-Verse. This basically establishes Miguel O'Hara as Spider-Man 2099 being the leader of this cross-dimensional thing or pocket dimension of Spider-Man from all over the alternate universe spectrum. And we get some really cool winks and nods to the comics, the animated stuff, the live action movies, and the others. I think the TV shows, the TV shows as well in this movie. And it has Miles going on a character arc of basically he was never destined to get a spider. It was from an alternate universe, and when the accident happened, that got all of the spider people to his universe, it caused a spider. Actually, no, I think this is actually beforehand. I think it was probably during one of the other experiments that Kingpin was running with the machine. But it caused the machine, I think, caused a spider from an alternate universe to teleport to Miles's universe, and it bit him, and he became the Spider-Man instead, where he was destined in this universe to not be. So, yeah. So Miguel O'Hara wants to, I think, correct that, and Miles just wants to go on living as he is. So he basically has to outrun the Legion of Spider People, and all that. However, at the end of the movie, he ends up in an alternate universe that is very similar to his own, but it's the universe where the spider that bit him originated from, And instead of becoming the Spider-Man of that universe, he instead became the Prowler under tutelage of his Uncle Aaron, which I forgot to mention his Uncle Aaron in the Into the Spider-Verse movie. His Uncle Aaron is literally just his Uncle Ben, but he still has his parents. Um, his his Uncle Aaron is really cool. It's also why they tried to put him in the Miles Morales game for the Insomniac games and everything, as well as Spider-Man 2 and everything. Basically, he becomes Miles's Uncle Ben. And it's really funny. In the comics, Miles's dad is the one to die and like inspire him to be a good Spider-Man. Or actually, no, it's his mother. His mother dies in the comics. In the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon and the Insomniac games, it's his father who dies. In these movies, it's his Uncle Aaron who dies. So yeah, I do also like the connection to the MCU because Donald Glover, who, funnily enough, Miles Morales was based on, because a fan casting for The Amazing Spider-Man was for a Black Peter to be played by Donald Glover. He played Aaron Davis in Homecoming, and he even mentioned the fact that he has a nephew, referring to Miles, and he's in this in full Prowler like getup, and it is him in live action footage shot on a green screen. It's fucking awesome. I love that. It's just quick enough that like you'll get what's going on if you're watching the MCU movies, but it's also just fun. I love that Easter egg and everything. And he also voiced Miles for like his first appearance or two in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon. Which is great. So yeah, can't wait to see if they actually use him as the Prowler in the MCU movies at some point, which I would love to see. So yeah, so this movie is fucking goated. I can't wait for the sequel, Beyond the Spider-Verse, to come out next year. This is just a really damn good movie. Watch these movies. They are fucking awesome. Spider-Man, Brand New Day. Okay, so this is going to come with some spoilers. I think this is a really good follow-up to No Way Home. So I just got back from watching this movie a few hours before I'm recording this, and I was looking forward to this movie, because here is the thing about it. I like John Watts as a director. He's fine as a director, and I think he got better and better as he went on with the Spider-Man Home trilogy. However, I'm fine with him not directing any more Spider-Man movies. He was also supposed to direct the Fantastic Four movie before, or the MCU one before, like, he stepped away because of, like, I guess production problems. John Watts is a director who I think made some really weird fucking choices, because he was one of the writers of Homecoming. I think he was also one of the writers on Far From Home, and maybe one for No Way Home. I can't remember, but like, he made some really weird ass decisions with these movies, and I do not care for that at all. And you know it was him because he was also the director. And he could have easily ironed out some of these problems if he actually thought about them for half a second, but nope. So this movie was directed by Destin Daniel Craig, who directed Shang-Chi. And you can tell that this is a guy who wanted to direct a Spider-Man movie and is a big fan of Spider-Man and has a big affinity for the character and the movies and the video games and everything. And there's just so much fun to be had with this movie. Now, the central theme of the movie is about Peter being lonely because of the fact that he let Ned and MJ go at the end of No Way Home, and just soldiered on as the Spider-Man with no one else in his life because of the whole I don't want anyone else to die for me or die because they know me, and they know I'm Spider-Man, and everything. And that was an intentional thing. Tom Holland talked about that in some interviews. And basically, the Peter of this movie is definitely very lonely. He doesn't have any real friends. I do like that he has an establishment of having a friend on the police force. That's very similar to Yuri Watanabe being the one for the Insomniac Games Peter Parker. And I do appreciate that. And even she tells him that he needs to take care of himself at a few different points, and he tries to ignore that. Basically, what he has been doing the last several years since No Way Home is basically just keeping himself busy by tying himself to the job of being Spider-Man and like all that shit. And unfortunately, it's leading him to become physically unhealthy. He gets headaches all the time, which I think is mainly just because he's not getting enough sleep. I have a thing where um if I don't get at least 6 to 7 hours of sleep a night consistently, I will get migraines. That is the main reason why I would ever get migraines. It's been a thing ever since I was in middle school. And luckily, I go a long ass time without getting a migraine now because I actually get a good amount of sleep, and I know that that's what's causing the migraines. But I completely feel Peter on that with the fact that he does not, or he gets the headaches and everything. So, yeah. However, he is also starting to mutate because partially due to his at least partially due to his emotional state from being lonely and everything, and also being a bit stressed and sad and all that shit, the arachnid DNA that has mutated his body is starting to overtake his human DNA, and as a result, his eyes go completely black when it flares up, and he gets more vulnerability. I think he has a better healing factor and all that shit. And he starts producing actual webs, like organic webs, out of his wrists, similar to Tobey Maguire's Peter. And he even says in the movie, Peter too had these. I can get used to this too. And, or basically says that. And, yeah. However, this becomes a problem when multiple times he gets so enraged that he just loses it. So he goes to Bruce Banner, who's teaching at ESU, to ask him how he invented his inhibitor thing that is keeping him from transforming into the Hulk. So it's funny with Bruce Banner. He has I talk about how Tony Stark has inconsistent characterization when it comes to the Spider-Man movies and his own, or the previous ones in the MCU. Bruce Banner has the most inconsistencies across all of these movies in terms of like what's keeping him from transforming into the Hulk, if he actually cares about being the Hulk, and if he finds a cure for being the Hulk or whatever. You know, because in Endgame they just established that he spent 3 months in a gamma lab and he invented a way to mix the brain and the brawn of the physical body of the Hulk with the mind of Bruce Banner. And that's just how he is. And then he appears in She-Hulk like that and everything. But here he just invents a device that inhibits the Hulk from transforming his body. Okay. Just whatever, I guess, MCU. Whatever you need for your movies. But I think it serves an actual purpose here versus like Endgame where it kind of doesn't. So Peter invents an inhibitor chip that brings his arachnid DNA levels down to manageable levels, and yeah. However, at the same time, there is a villain who is mind controlling people to try and find something, and this is where the spoilers come in because that's just the setup of the movie. It's Jean Grey. Jean Grey from the X-Men. She is using her psychic powers to try and overshadow people to find her sister, Sarah. Damage Control kidnapped Sarah because they wanted to use her powers to try and replicate them in regular people. And this kind of has like deep state kind of political feels to it, where it seems like Damage Control wants to control the minds of everybody on Earth. Yeah. And apparently the guy who's leading damage control in this movie is an X-Men villain, which, yeah, that tracks. Um, so, yeah, I didn't know that going into this movie, because I don't care about X-Men that much in regards to, like, comic book shit. But once I found that out from Jeremy Johns' like, spoiler talk video, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Which I watched after going to this movie. So then, um, uh, Spider-Man initially takes her down by putting an inhibitor chip on her, which then causes her to get taken in by damage control when she's knocked out by a tranq dart. And then he figures out who Sarah is by contacting the new Black Widow and getting information on Jean Grey and everything when he finds her name and everything. And yeah, he then goes to try and save her from damage control and finds out that, like she does, that damage control killed her sister, experimenting on her to try and get or to try and understand how her powers work in her brain and everything. So yeah, but through his memories of his Aunt May, he helps her understand that there's a better way to go about these things, and as a result, she calms the fuck down and goes on her own path and everything. But unfortunately, we got Punisher in this movie, who is actually really cool, really good. I like this character and everything. Granted, I haven't seen anything he's been in for the MCU other than Daredevil season 2. I do like John Bernthal in the role and everything, and I think that he is written very well here. He tries to use a sniper rifle to take down Jean Grey when she uses her powers to like what is the word? Like just make everybody stand still and everything within a 1 kilometer radius of the damage control building they're in. But Peter saves her by taking the bullet for her, and then she uses her powers to try and keep him alive, and then she keeps it working long enough for Punisher to take him to a hospital where the doctors work on him, and he pulls through. So yeah. This movie, in terms of the other things that's going on, when I saw like trailer stuff, early trailer stuff that showed MJ and Ned were back in this after No Way Home made a definitive decision, similar to the first Iron Man movie, actually, of having Peter leave Ned and MJ and everything so that they can live their own lives without him, especially because they forgot him. I was worried that they were going to have Peter and MJ get back together, because I honestly do not like future movies or just projects reneging on decisions the previous installment just made. I feel like that's bad storytelling. Like Doctor Who, for instance, the Eighth Doctor's era, all about finding Gallifrey. He eventually finds Gallifrey and then puts them in at the end of time or the universe or whatever the fuck. Then you have the Chris Chibnall era, which shits all over that, and has the my voice is starting to go, but that was also kind of like a burp. Yeah. I should get something to drink. But anyways, so yeah, but it shits all over that by having the Master go to Gallifrey and just tear it the fuck up. And yeah, there was no reason for that, and it's fucking stupid, and it ruins the storytelling that Stephen Moffat was going for. But yeah. And it's also just fucking pointless. Anyways, so yeah, just that's an instance of that in fiction that I fucking hate. But anyways, so yeah, but the good thing is that they established that Ned and MJ, because of the spell in No Way Home that made them forget Peter Parker, they do not have any memories of him. MJ makes that definitively clear in this movie. And thus, she doesn't have any actual romantic feelings for him. She doesn't remember him when he comes clean about what happens, because she finds the note that he wrote that he was going to read to her at the end of No Way Home before he changed that decision. And she yeah, she just she doesn't hate him, but like she just again, she's just kind of I think she's more neutral on him. She doesn't really have any feelings towards him in that regret or in that regard. Um so yeah. So they're not back together at the end of the movie, which is great. I don't really this is a thing I just have. I don't like that Zendaya became such an integral part of this version of Spider-Man's story. I don't like that they keep bringing her back, like because of the fact that her and Tom Holland have been going out for the longest time and now are married. Um, and I really don't want future Spider-Man movies to like bring her back and then reverse what he did in terms of her memories, because they made a definitive statement here that she doesn't remember because of the spell. They even shit all over like him having like or her having a thing where she remembers him from the kiss that Jean Grey when she infects or when she possesses her makes them have. Um Maybe that was after that. But anyways, yeah. Uh I very much appreciate that the angle that they went at with this movie and in terms of that, and I think that that was the right call because I think a lesser director would have reneged on that decision, and to try and make like the audience maybe happy or at least the suits happy. But yeah, future Spider-Man movies should be going with different love interests for Peter, and having him move on from MJ I think would be the healthiest thing for him. But yeah, she shows him getting being friends with Ned again because they've been friends for a while before the mind wipe or the memory wipe. Um, so I'm fine with that, but yeah. Um, in terms of the MCU elements, just like No Way Home, they have fun with it. They don't like have it inform the plot. They have fun with it. So they show a montage at the beginning of Peter taking on several different foes, like Tombstone, Scorpion, the Hand, and some other like bad guys. And they establish that he knows the Punisher, that they have encountered each other before, and he actually saved the Punisher's life on Staten Island at some point in the last several years. Um, and that I actually really like. We're at the point of the MCU now where established characters like Spider-Man, they don't need a big reveal of some of the people that they know. You know, it's kind of like the Insomniac games where um the first Insomniac Spider-Man game, um they use the fact that they're adapting or they're telling the story of an experienced Peter who knows a lot of what happened or has been through a lot in the 8 years that he's been Spider-Man. Um, to say, hey, these these bad guys are pre-established. You kind of know them from other places. These are our versions of them, and they have them just be a part of the established world. And they just give you enough to go off of for their personalities and their powers for you to make sense of it. That's just the thing that I very much appreciate that they're going with for this. You know, I would love to see Tombstone put into a new movie because he was in the first Spider-Verse movie. I would love to see him in live action just for an extended period of time. Um, but we'll see what they do. I would also love to see like Black Cat be involved. And the thing about this movie is due to Peter mutating due to his uh his arachnid DNA going haywire. I think that that's pre-establishing a direction for this trilogy that they're doing um of movies to eventually get to a storyline where Peter becomes Man Spider and something happens there. Whether he dies or not, I don't know, or gets completely cured of his spider-ness, I don't know. I wouldn't want him to die, but like yeah, so they're probably gearing up for that. They also have, right, I forgot to mention this about No Way Home. They even included Tom Hardy's Venom and Eddie Brock from the Venom movies. Makes no sense why he's there, but, you know, a few things don't make any sense about why some of the villains are there for this movie. And there was a drop of the Venom symbiote that was left in the MCU, and you would think that it would be getting up to New York City by like possessing people. So I hope that they'll do a black suit storyline and actually make it good, because this was not it. Neither was the second Insomniac or second main Insomniac Spider-Man game. But yeah. So in regards to this, oh yeah, did I say I'd want to see Black Cat in live action? I'd like to see maybe a new version of Gwen Stacy. I'd love to see new versions of the villains from the previous movies too. Do them either just as good, if not better, or just good in general. But yeah, also maybe have Peter work for the Daily Bugle as a photographer. We don't really, I don't think there's any establishing of Peter, like where he gets his money to pay for his apartment or his tech or anything. I assume maybe he's getting paychecks as Spider-Man from the police. But they don't really establish that in the movie. So I don't know. Hopefully they can like mention something about that in a future Spider-Man movie, but yeah. So yeah, this is a good fresh start for Spider-Man. I do like the direction that they went with for a lot of this. It also, by the way, takes plot elements from the second main Insomniac game from Spider-Man 2, weirdly enough, and does them better. The second Insomniac game is not good. Like, it starts off fine, but it shits the bed in the third act. The second act makes it kind of drop in quality, unfortunately, a lot. And that's a result of them having more stuff planned than they could feasibly put into the game, and then needing to truncate and drop a bunch of shit that they were planning to put in the game. And what's there happens way too fast, happens way too stupid, and just is not great. This movie, however, does a lot of those plot elements very well. Peter reeling from his aunt dying is much better here. It's handled much more maturely, and it just makes sense. Like, Peter has been without his aunt for several years. He's still reeling from that, but like it's more of just like, I think, survivor's guilt than anything. And he doesn't let it get to him too much, or at least he tries to not let it get to him. There's the returning friends thing, kind of, which different ways of doing it. I think that they did Harry fine in that movie, which, funnily enough, that's from Amazing Spider-Man 2, but yeah, that they just took that plot element and plumped it into Spider-Man 2. What else? The whole, like, someone taking over people plot, I think, was better. And what else? Peter putting himself into his work and becoming kind of a workaholic to his detriment, I think, is better. I'm pretty sure that they do that in the second Insomniac game. But yeah, just a bunch of plot elements and side stuff they did in that game is just done better here, and that I can always appreciate. So yeah, guys, that has been it for this ranking video. It's been almost 3 hours, so I'm going to call it here, especially since I need to give my voice a rest. So yeah, guys, not much else to say, so links in the description, all my shit. Subscribe if you want, and I'll see you guys in the next one.